When Evelyn Carter photographed her last wedding, she never imagined the next frame would capture her own destruction. The invisible artist who spent years behind the lens documenting other people's joy while drowning in her own emptiness made one decision that shattered everything. She said yes to a stranger in the shadows. Adrian Voss didn't just see her. He chose her. And in his world, being chosen means crossing lines drawn in blood. This is the story of a woman who became visible by stepping into darkness and discovered that some photographs can't be deleted, some choices can't be undone, and some men can't be escaped. Watch until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The Copley Plaza Hotel glittered like a jewelry box that Friday night, all crystal chandeliers and champagne toasts, and Evelyn Carter wanted nothing more than to disappear. She moved through the wedding reception like a ghost, her camera raised, her presence erased. The bride twirled in ivory silk. The groom laughed with his groomsmen. Guests clinked glasses and swayed to string quartets. And Evelyn captured it all while remaining completely, blessedly invisible. That was her talent, her curse, her entire existence. Beautiful work. The voice came from behind her, low, controlled, wrapped in an accent she couldn't quite place. European, maybe. Old money, definitely. Evelyn turned, lowering her camera, and found herself looking at a man who didn't belong in this pastel world of champagne bubbles and vanilla cake. He stood in the shadows near the terrace doors, perfectly still, tall, dark-haired, dressed in a suit so precisely tailored it looked like armor. His face was all sharp angles, high cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, eyes so dark they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. And he was looking directly at her, not through her, not past her, at her. Evelyn's throat tightened. "I'm sorry?" "Your photographs." He stepped forward, and the movement was deliberate, controlled, like a predator who'd already calculated every possible outcome. "You see what others miss. The father watching his daughter dance. The bridesmaid fixing the bride's train when she thinks no one's looking. You capture truth, not performance." Heat crawled up Evelyn's neck. Guests had complimented her work before, but always as an afterthought, background noise while they scrolled their phones or grabbed another drink. This man spoke like he'd studied her, analyzed her, understood something she'd never put into words. "That's very kind," she managed, her voice smaller than she'd intended. "But I should get back to one drink." He nodded toward the hotel bar, visible through the open archway. 10 minutes. I have a proposition for you." Every rational instinct screamed at her to decline. Strange men, dark corners, propositions. Nothing good ever started this way. But something in his eyes held her captive. Not threat, but recognition. Like he saw her, actually saw her. "I don't even know your name," Evelyn said. His mouth curved into something that might have been a smile, if smiles could be dangerous. "Adrian Voss. And you're Evelyn Carter, photographer, artist, and someone who deserves better than capturing other people's happiness while ignoring your own." The words hit like a physical blow. Evelyn stepped back, her camera suddenly heavy against her chest. "How do you—" 10 minutes, Adrian repeated, then turned and walked toward the bar without looking back, as if her compliance was inevitable. Evelyn stood frozen in the reception hall, her heart hammering against her ribs. Around her the wedding continued. Laughter, music, the clink of silverware on china. She should finish her job, pack her equipment, go home to her cramped studio apartment and edit photos until her eyes burned. Instead, she found herself walking toward the bar. Quote. The hotel bar was all dark wood and leather, designed for quiet conversations and expensive whiskey. Adrian sat in a corner booth, 2 glasses already waiting. He didn't stand when she approached, didn't perform the rituals of politeness. He simply watched her slide into the seat across from him. "Macallan 18, he said, pushing one glass toward her. "Unless you prefer something else." "I don't usually drink." Evelyn's fingers wrapped around the glass anyway, needing something to do with her hands. "And I definitely don't meet strange men in hotel bars." "Yet here you are." "Here I am." She took a sip. The whiskey burned smooth and expensive down her throat. "So what's this proposition? Are you getting married? Because I'm booked solid through October." "I'm not getting married." Adrian's tone suggested the very idea was absurd. I need a photographer for a different kind of project. My properties, private collections, events that require discretion. Discretion. Evelyn set down her glass carefully. That's an interesting word choice. I value privacy. The people I work with value privacy. Your photographs would never appear publicly without explicit permission. His eyes never left hers. But they would be seen by the right people. Collectors, gallery owners, the kind of connections that turn invisible artists into visible ones. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She'd been invisible for so long, 3 years since graduation, working weddings and corporate headshots and bar mitzvahs, watching her classmates get gallery shows and magazine features, while she remained perpetually behind the camera. What kind of properties? She asked carefully. Real estate, hospitality, import-export. Adrian's fingers traced the rim of his glass. I own several historic buildings in Boston. The brownstone on Beacon Hill, the warehouse district properties in Seaport. Each one has a story. I want you to tell those stories. It sounded legitimate, professional, exactly the kind of opportunity she'd been waiting for. So why did her stomach twist with warning? Why me? Evelyn pressed. There are hundreds of photographers in Boston, more experienced, better connected. Better connected, perhaps. Adrian leaned forward, and suddenly the space between them felt impossibly small, but not better. I've seen your work, Evelyn. The wedding you photographed last month at the Harbor Hotel, you captured the moment the bride's grandmother started crying during the vows. Not the obvious tears, the single one that fell before anyone else noticed. That's not technique. That's gift. You've been following my work. The words came out flat, but Evelyn's mind raced. How long had he been watching? What else did he know? I research what I invest in. Adrian pulled out a business card, heavy stock, embossed lettering. Think about it. Call me Monday morning. We'll discuss rates and timeline. Evelyn took the card. The name read simply, Adrian Voss. Acquisitions. No company name, no addresses, just a phone number. What if I say no? She asked. For the first time, Adrian's expression shifted. Something flickered behind those dark eyes, too fast to name. Then you go back to photographing other people's happiness while your own talent dies slowly in the dark. But you won't say no. You seem very certain. I am. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with precise movements. Because you're hungry, Evelyn. Not for money or fame, those are easy. You're hungry for something deeper, to matter, to be seen, to create something that proves you exist. He paused, his gaze holding hers with uncomfortable intensity. I can give you that. The question is whether you're brave enough to take it. Then he walked away, leaving Evelyn alone with an empty whiskey glass and a business card that felt like a loaded gun in her hand. Evelyn didn't sleep that night. She lay in her studio apartment, one room, barely 400 square feet, with prints covering every wall like evidence of a life she couldn't quite claim, and stared at Adrian's business card on her nightstand. Adrian Voss. Acquisitions. What did he acquire exactly? She grabbed her laptop and searched his name. The results were sparse. A few mentions in business journals about real estate transactions. A photograph from a charity gala 3 years ago where he stood in the background, perfectly still, while everyone else smiled for the camera. No social media, no interviews, no digital footprint beyond the bare minimum. That should have been her first warning. Instead, it felt like confirmation. Adrian Voss existed outside the normal rules, outside the desperate scramble for likes and followers and validation. He operated in shadows, and somehow that felt more real than anything Evelyn had experienced in years. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend, Maya. How was the wedding? Any hot groomsmen? Evelyn typed out a response, deleted it, then tried again. Met someone. Not a groomsman. Can't explain. Girl. Details. Now. But there were no details that made sense. How could she explain Adrian Voss? The way he looked at her like she was a puzzle he'd already solved. The way his words had peeled back her skin and exposed every desperate, hungry thing she tried to hide. Tomorrow, Evelyn typed. Need to think. She set down her phone and picked up Adrian's card again. Monday morning felt impossibly far away. The weekend crawled past. Evelyn edited wedding photos and tried not to think about dark eyes and dangerous propositions. She failed spectacularly. By Sunday night, she'd convinced herself not to call. Adrienne Voss was trouble, the kind of trouble that came wrapped in expensive suits and quiet authority. She had a career, modest as it was. She had stability, safety. She had invisibility. Monday morning, her phone rang at exactly 9 o'clock. Evelyn stared at the unknown number, her heart in her throat. She should let it go to voicemail. She should delete Adrienne's card and forget Friday night ever happened. She answered. "Good morning, Evelyn." Adrienne's voice was exactly as she remembered, controlled, certain, absolutely assured of her response. "I'm at the brownstone on Beacon Hill. Are you free this morning?" Evelyn looked around her apartment, at the laundry she hadn't folded and the coffee she hadn't finished and the completely normal Monday morning she'd planned. "You said to call you. I'm impatient." She could hear the smile in his voice. "And I think you are too. The address is 287 Beacon. Can you be here in an hour?" "No." The word formed in her mouth. "No, this is crazy. I don't know you. This feels wrong." "I'll be there," she said instead. "Bring your camera." Adrienne ended the call before she could respond. Evelyn sat on her unmade bed, phone still pressed to her ear, and wondered what the hell she'd just agreed to. So, the brownstone on Beacon Hill was beautiful in the way only old money could be. 4 stories of red brick and black shutters, with window boxes full of late summer flowers and a door that probably cost more than Evelyn's car. She stood on the sidewalk, her camera bag heavy on her shoulder, and tried to remember how to breathe. The door opened before she could knock. Adrienne stood in the entrance, dressed more casually than Friday night. Dark jeans, a black sweater that probably cost $1,000, no tie. Somehow, he looked even more dangerous without the suit's polish. "You came," he said. "You knew I would." "I hoped." He stepped back, gesturing her inside. "Welcome to my favorite property." Evelyn entered, and the world shifted. The brownstone's exterior whispered old Boston elegance. The interior screamed something else entirely. Minimalist luxury. All clean lines and original architectural details preserved with obvious care. Hardwood floors gleamed. Crown molding framed walls painted in shades of gray and cream. Afternoon light poured through tall windows, making everything glow. But it was the art that stopped Evelyn's breath. Paintings lined the walls, not reproductions, but originals. Contemporary pieces that vibrated with color and emotion. Sculptures occupied corners like silent witnesses, and in the front parlor, a massive photograph dominated the space. A black and white image of the Boston skyline at dawn, so perfectly composed it looked like a dream. "You like it?" Adrienne's voice came from behind her. "It's incredible." Evelyn moved closer to the photograph, studying the grain, the contrast, the way light transformed concrete and glass into something transcendent. "Who's the photographer?" "You are." Evelyn spun around. "What?" Adrienne crossed to a side table, picked up a portfolio, and handed it to her. "You photographed the skyline from the rooftop of the Harbor Hotel. 18 months ago, 4 a.m., during that unseasonable fog. You posted it on your website and sold exactly 0 prints." Evelyn opened the portfolio with shaking hands. Inside were her photographs. Not just the skyline, but dozens of images she'd taken and posted and watched disappear into the void of internet indifference. Street scenes, architectural details, moments of urban beauty that no one had noticed. Adrienne had noticed. He'd collected them, printed them, displayed them like they mattered. "How?" Her voice cracked. "How did you get these?" "I told you, I research what I invest in." Adrienne moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. "You have extraordinary talent, Evelyn, but talent without visibility is just private suffering. I want to change that. By hiring me to photograph your properties." She couldn't look away from her own work, seeing it through his eyes. Valuable, important, real. "By giving you access to a world you've only photographed from the outside." Adrienne turned to face her fully. "I don't just own buildings, Evelyn. I own opportunity, connections, power. Work with me, and every door in Boston's art world opens. Gallery shows, private collectors, recognition." It sounded too good to be true. It probably was too good to be true, but Evelyn had been invisible for so long, and Adrian Voss was offering her exactly what she'd starved for: to be seen. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. "Photographs, discretion, and honesty." His dark eyes held hers. "I need someone who sees truth, not performance. Someone who can capture my properties, my world, exactly as it is. And in return? In return, I make you visible." The words hung between them like a promise and a threat. Evelyn knew she should walk away. Every instinct screamed warning. This man, this offer, this entire situation felt balanced on a razor's edge between opportunity and danger. But she'd been safe her entire life, and safety had gotten her nowhere. "When do we start?" she heard herself say. Adrian's smile was sharp enough to cut. "Right now, Mam Sukit." The next 3 hours were a blur of light and composition, and Adrian Voss watching her work with an intensity that made her skin feel too tight. Evelyn photographed every room of the brownstone, losing herself in the familiar rhythm of creation. She captured the way afternoon sun turned the parlor into a cathedral of light, the contrast between original brick and modern fixtures in the kitchen, the view from the fourth-floor master suite where Boston spread out like a promise. And always, always she felt Adrian's presence, not hovering, not directing, just observing, like he was photographing her while she photographed his world. "You're different when you work," he said finally, as Evelyn packed her equipment in the front hall. "Different how?" "Present, certain, like you know exactly who you are and what you want." Adrian leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "The rest of the time you apologize for taking up space. But behind that camera, you disappear into yourself. It's remarkable." No one had ever described her work that way. Clients praised the final product, the perfect wedding shot, the flattering headshot. No one saw the process, the transformation. Adrian saw everything. "I'll edit these tonight," Evelyn said, trying to sound professional despite the heat climbing her neck. "Have proofs to you by Wednesday. Have dinner with me instead." The words landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading in every direction. "That's not," Evelyn started. "Professional?" Adrian pushed off the doorframe. "No, it's not. But I'm not interested in being professional with you, Evelyn. I'm interested in you." Her mouth went dry. "You hired me to photograph your properties. I hired you because you're brilliant. I asked you to dinner because you're fascinating." He moved closer, and Evelyn's back hit the wall without her consciously retreating. "Tell me you don't feel this." "This?" Her voice came out breathless. "This!" Adrian didn't touch her, but he didn't have to. The air between them crackled with electricity. "Whatever started Friday night at that hotel bar. Whatever made you say yes this morning, even though every rational part of you screamed to run." Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs. She should leave, should establish boundaries, should remember that mixing business with whatever this was never ended well. "One dinner," Adrian said softly. "Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. The restaurant is called Mistral. Do you know it?" She knew it. Expensive, exclusive, the kind of place where people who mattered went to see and be seen, the kind of place Evelyn Carter had never imagined entering. "I don't have anything to wear to a place like that," she admitted. Adrian's expression softened into something that might have been genuine warmth. "Wear anything? You could show up in jeans and a t-shirt and still be the most captivating person in the room." He paused. "But if it makes you more comfortable, I'll send a car at 6:30. The driver will have something for you." "You're sending me clothes?" Evelyn's voice pitched higher. "That's presumptuous, controlling? Probably." Adrian didn't look remotely apologetic. "But I want you to feel as extraordinary as you are. And I'm very good at getting what I want." He opened the door then, letting in cool September air and the sounds of Beacon Hill traffic. Evelyn gathered her camera bag and walked past him, hyper-aware of the inches between their bodies, the way his cologne mixed with her quickening pulse. "Evelyn." His voice stopped her on the front steps. She turned. "Don't overthink this," Adrian said. "Sometimes the best decisions are the ones that terrify you." Then he closed the door, leaving her standing alone in the afternoon sunlight, wondering if she'd just made the best decision of her life or signed her own death warrant in ink she couldn't see yet. The dress arrived at 6 o'clock the next evening. Evelyn stared at the box on her doorstep, glossy black, tied with silver ribbon, no card. She knew who'd sent it before she opened the lid. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a dress that cost more than 3 months of her rent. Midnight blue silk that caught the light like water. Simple lines, elegant cut, nothing flashy or ostentatious. The kind of dress that whispered wealth instead of shouting it. Maya, who'd been perched on Evelyn's bed providing running commentary on the entire Adrian Voss situation, let out a low whistle. "Okay," she said. "I take back everything I said about this being a terrible idea. Any man who sends a dress like that either wants to marry you or murder you, and honestly, either way, you're wearing it." "That's not reassuring, Maya." "It's not supposed to be reassuring. It's supposed to be honest." Maya stood and crossed to where Evelyn held the dress like it might bite. "You've been invisible your whole life, Ev, playing it safe, being small. This man sees you, actually sees you. That's terrifying, yeah, but maybe it's time to be terrified." Evelyn looked at her reflection in the mirror. Plain face, unremarkable features, the kind of woman people's eyes slid past without registering. She'd built an entire identity around being overlooked. Adrian Voss was offering her the exact opposite. "What if I can't do this?" she whispered. "Do what? Wear a pretty dress? Have dinner with a gorgeous, mysterious man who clearly wants you?" "Belong in his world." Maya's expression gentled. "Babe, you don't belong in his world. You belong in your own world. The question is whether his world has room for yours, and whether you're brave enough to find out." The car arrived at 6:30. Evelyn descended her apartment building steps in the midnight blue dress, and the only heels she owned, simple black, bought for her cousin's wedding 2 years ago. The September evening was cool enough for the wrap she'd grabbed at the last minute, but warm enough that she wasn't shivering, at least not from cold. The driver was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and zero interest in conversation. He opened the car door, a sleek black sedan that screamed money, and Evelyn slid inside. They drove through Boston in silence. Evelyn watched the city transform from her neighborhood's familiar streets to the South End's tree-lined elegance. Mistral sat on Columbus Avenue, its entrance marked by soft lighting and understated signage, the kind of place that didn't need to advertise. The right people already knew. The car stopped. The driver opened her door, and Adrian Voss stood waiting on the sidewalk, dressed in a dark suit that made him look like sin personified. His eyes tracked her from heels to hair, the assessment so thorough Evelyn felt naked despite yards of silk. "You're stunning," he said simply. "You sent the dress." "I sent the dress. You make it art." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" Evelyn took his arm because refusing seemed impossible, and together they walked into Mistral like they belonged there, like she belonged anywhere near this world of white tablecloths and wine lists she couldn't pronounce. The maitre d' greeted Adrian by name. Their table was in a corner, private but not hidden. Evelyn sat and tried to remember how to breathe normally. "You're nervous," Adrian observed once they'd been left with menus and water. "I'm terrified." "Why?" "Because—" Evelyn gestured helplessly at the restaurant, the dress, him. "This isn't my life. These aren't my people. I don't know the rules." "There are no rules." Adrian's voice was steady, certain. "There's just you and me and a conversation. Everything else is theater." "Easy for you to say. You belong here." "I belong nowhere." The words were delivered without emotion, but something flickered behind Adrian's eyes, something raw and quickly hidden. "I simply learned to act like I do. There's a difference." Evelyn studied him across the small table. "You're not going to tell me your life story, are you?" "Would you believe it if I did?" He smiled without warmth. "People lie about their pasts, Evelyn. They're more honest about their present. So let me be honest, I want to know you. The real you, not the version that apologizes for existing." A server appeared with wine. Adrian must have ordered before her arrival. She sipped and tasted money and grapes from somewhere she'd never been. "What do you want to know?" she asked. "Everything, but we'll start simple." Adrian leaned back, completely comfortable in his expensive suit and this expensive restaurant and this expensive life. "Why photography?" "Because—" Evelyn paused, surprised by the question's simplicity. "Because it's the only time I feel like I exist. Behind the camera, I'm present. I matter. I'm creating proof that I was here, that I saw something, that it was real. And without the camera? Without the camera, I'm invisible. You're not invisible right now. Right now, I'm terrified. Adrian's expression shifted into something that might have been understanding. Fear and visibility often arrive together. The question is what you do with both. They talked through dinner, really talked, not the surface-level small talk Evelyn usually endured on the rare dates that punctuated her life. Adrian asked about her childhood in suburban Connecticut, her decision to pursue art despite her parents' doubts, the moment she realized photography was her language. And slowly, carefully, he shared pieces of himself. Fragments, really. He'd grown up in Europe, somewhere he didn't specify. Came to Boston at 25. Built his business from nothing through what he called strategic acquisitions. But the details stayed vague, deliberately vague. You're evading, Evelyn said finally, emboldened by wine, and the way Adrian looked at her like she was the only person in the crowded restaurant. I'm protecting you. The words fell between them like stones. From what? Evelyn asked. From knowing too much, too soon. Adrian's jaw tightened. My world has sharp edges, Evelyn. I'm trying to show you the beautiful parts first. And later? Later, you'll decide whether the beauty is worth the blood. Evelyn's breath caught. That's a hell of a thing to say on a first date. This isn't a first date. This is an inevitability. Adrian reached across the table and took her hand, the first time he touched her, and the contact sent electricity racing up her arm. From the moment I saw you at that wedding, this was inevitable. You felt it too. That's why you're here, despite every rational instinct telling you to run. He was right, she had felt it. Still felt it, this pull toward him that made no sense in every sense simultaneously. What happens now? She whispered. Now I take you home. I don't kiss you, even though I want to. And tomorrow, you photograph my warehouse property in Seaport. We work together. We get to know each other. We let this... He squeezed her hand. Build slowly instead of burning too fast. You've thought this through. I think everything through, Evelyn. It's how I've survived. The server brought dessert, something chocolate and French that Evelyn barely tasted. The wine kept flowing. The conversation drifted to safer topics, books, art, the eternal Boston question of Red Sox versus Yankees. But underneath the surface civility, something pulsed and waited. When the car dropped her home at 11, Adrian walked her to her building's door. He didn't reach for her, didn't cross the final inches between them. Thank you, Evelyn said, inadequate but sincere. For what? For seeing me. Adrian's smile was sharp and sad. Thank you for letting me. He returned to the car and Evelyn climbed the stairs to her apartment, the midnight blue dress swishing around her legs, her entire world tilted on an axis she didn't understand. Maya was asleep on her couch, waiting for details. Evelyn woke her gently. I think I'm in trouble. Good trouble or bad trouble? Maya mumbled. I don't know yet, but she suspected. Deep in her bones, beneath the wine and the dress, and the way Adrian had looked at her like she mattered, Evelyn suspected she was falling into something she couldn't climb out of. And the most terrifying part was that she didn't want to. The warehouse in Seaport smelled like money and secrets. Evelyn arrived at 10 the next morning, camera bag over her shoulder, still feeling the ghost of Adrian's hand around hers. The building rose 6 stories of exposed brick and massive windows, the kind of industrial chic conversion that tech companies and hedge funds fought over. A discreet bronze plaque beside the entrance read simply, Voss Holdings. The door opened before she could knock. Not Adrian this time, but a man built like a wall, 6'4", shoulders that strained against his suit jacket, and eyes that cataloged her in less than a second. His expression revealed nothing. Ms. Carter, he said, his voice surprisingly soft. I'm Marcus. Mr. Voss is expecting you. Thank you. Evelyn followed him inside, her heels clicking on polished concrete floors. The warehouse's interior stole her breath. Someone had transformed industrial bones into sophisticated space. Original brick walls, steel beams painted matte black, and natural light pouring through windows that must have cost a fortune to restore. But it wasn't empty. Equipment filled the first floor, crates stamped with customs markings, pallets wrapped in plastic, forklifts parked in precise rows. This wasn't just a pretty building. This was an active business. Marcus led her to an industrial elevator with accordion doors. They rose in silence, Evelyn acutely aware of the man beside her, the way he stood between her and the door, the subtle bulge under his jacket that suggested a weapon. Bodyguard, she realized. Adrian had a bodyguard. The elevator opened on the 6th floor, and suddenly everything changed. Here, the warehouse became something else entirely. The raw industrial aesthetic remained, but luxury crept into every detail. Original art hung on exposed brick. Furniture that belonged in design magazines filled the open floor plan, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Boston Harbor that probably added 7 figures to the property's value. Adrian stood at those windows, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid fire in a language Evelyn didn't recognize. Italian, maybe, or something Eastern European. His back was to her, suit jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. Even from behind, he radiated control. Marcus cleared his throat softly. Adrian turned, his expression shifting from cold business to something warmer when he saw Evelyn. He ended his call without ceremony. Evelyn, right on time. He crossed the space between them, and Evelyn caught a whiff of expensive cologne mixed with something darker. Exhaustion, maybe, or stress. Coffee? Please. He gestured to a kitchen area that probably cost more than her entire apartment. Marcus disappeared without a word, and suddenly Evelyn was alone with Adrian in this beautiful, unsettling space. This building is incredible, she said, setting down her camera bag. What do you use it for? Import-export, primarily. I bring things into the country that people need. Adrian poured coffee from a machine that looked like it required an engineering degree. The first 4 floors are storage and distribution. The 5th is offices. This, he gestured around them, is mine. You live here? Sometimes, when work requires it. He handed her a mug. I own several properties. The brownstone, this warehouse, a house in Brookline. I move between them depending on necessity. Evelyn sipped coffee, perfect of course, and studied Adrian in the morning light. He looked different than last night. Still impeccably dressed, still devastatingly handsome, but there were shadows under his eyes that makeup couldn't hide and a tension in his shoulders that suggested he hadn't slept. Rough night? She asked. Adrian's mouth quirked. Perceptive. Yes. Some business complications in Prague. Nothing that concerns you. You keep saying that. Nothing that concerns me. Evelyn set down her coffee carefully. But I'm here, in your building, being escorted by armed men. At what point does it start concerning me? For a long moment, Adrian simply looked at her. Then he laughed. A genuine sound that transformed his face into something younger, less guarded. You're braver than you think, he said. Most people don't question me directly. Maybe most people aren't trying to figure out whether you're dangerous. I am dangerous, Evelyn, but not to you. He moved closer, close enough that she could see the precise line of his jaw, the way his dark eyes held flecks of something lighter. Never to you. The words should have been romantic. Instead, they sounded like a threat to everyone else. Evelyn's phone buzzed in her pocket, shattering the moment. She glanced at it. Maya, texting a string of question marks. She'd promised to check in, to prove Adrian Voss wasn't a serial killer who lured women to warehouses. I should let my friend know I'm alive, Evelyn said, trying for lightness. Smart. Always tell someone where you are. Adrian stepped back, giving her space. I'll show you the building. You can photograph whatever interests you. And Evelyn? Yes? If anything ever makes you uncomfortable, anything at all, Marcus will take you home immediately. No questions asked. It was the second time he'd given her an exit, the second time he'd made sure she knew she could leave, which made her want to stay even more. They spent the next 3 hours exploring the warehouse, and Evelyn lost herself in work. She photographed the way sunlight cut through the 6th floor's massive windows, the contrast between rough brick and refined furniture, the view of Boston Harbor, where container ships drifted like steel dreams. Adrian stayed close but not hovering, answering her questions about the building's history while avoiding anything deeper. It had been built in 1923, originally stored textiles, nearly demolished in the 90s before he acquired it and poured a fortune into renovation. But when Evelyn asked what he imported, Adrian's answers turned vague. Various goods. Depends on client needs. When she asked about his business partners, he smiled and changed the subject. And when she tried to photograph the lower floors, Marcus materialized from nowhere with a polite but immovable, "I'm sorry, Miss Carter. Those areas aren't accessible today." Evelyn lowered her camera, frustration building. "What's down there that I can't see?" "Inventory," Adrian said smoothly, appearing beside Marcus. "Nothing photogenic, just crates and paperwork." "You're hiding something." "I'm protecting proprietary information. There's a difference." He touched her elbow gently. "Come, I want to show you something. He led her back to the 6th floor, to an office she hadn't noticed earlier, all glass walls and minimalist furniture. But it was the photographs covering one wall that stopped Evelyn's heart. Her photographs. Not just the ones he'd shown her at the brownstone, but dozens more. Every image she'd ever posted online, printed large-scale and arranged like a gallery exhibition. Street scenes from her early morning walks. Architectural details most people walked past without seeing. That one perfect shot of rain on cobblestones in the North End. "I don't understand," Evelyn whispered. Adrian stood beside her, hands in his pockets, watching her reaction. "I told you, I research what I invest in, but this..." He gestured at the wall. "This isn't research. This is admiration. How long have you been following my work?" 8 months? Since I saw your photograph of the marathon finish line at dawn. Empty, quiet, just light and shadow and the weight of history. Everyone else photographs the marathon during the race. Noise and crowds and performance. You photographed the truth underneath." 8 months. He'd been watching her work for 8 months before approaching her. "That's not normal," Evelyn said. "I'm not normal." Adrian turned to face her fully. "I'm a man who takes what he wants and eliminates obstacles, but with you, I wanted to wait. To understand you before approaching. To make sure..." He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his features. "To make sure I could give you what you needed." "Which is what?" "To be seen, to be valued, to have your talent recognized by people who matter." He pulled out his phone, tapped something, then handed it to her. "Read." Evelyn took the phone. On screen was an email chain between Adrian and someone named Catherine Moreau, apparently the director of one of Boston's most prestigious galleries. The conversation discussed an upcoming exhibition of emerging photographers and Catherine's interest in seeing Evelyn's portfolio. "You're trying to get me a gallery show," Evelyn breathed. "I'm opening a door. Whether you walk through it is your choice." Adrian retrieved his phone. "Catherine is brilliant, ruthless, and only shows work she believes in. I can introduce you. The rest is up to your talent." It was everything Evelyn had dreamed of. Everything she'd worked toward through 3 years of invisible grinding. And it was being handed to her by a man who admitted to eliminating obstacles. "What do you get from this?" she asked carefully. Adrian's expression went distant. "The satisfaction of making something beautiful more visible. I acquire things, Evelyn. Art, property, opportunities. But I also create. Your success would be my creation. I'm not a thing to be acquired. No, you're not." He moved closer, and Evelyn's back hit the glass wall behind her. "You're the first person in a very long time who interests me as more than a transaction. That terrifies me almost as much as I suspect this terrifies you." His admission hung between them, raw, unexpected, deeply human. Evelyn's phone buzzed again. Maya, probably wondering if she needed an extraction team. But Evelyn couldn't look away from Adrian's dark eyes. Couldn't process anything beyond the magnetic pull drawing her toward this dangerous, complicated man. "I should go," she managed. "I have enough photographs. I'll edit them tonight." "Have lunch with me first." Not a question, not quite a demand, something in between. "Adrian, 1 hour. There's a cafe 2 blocks away. We'll eat. Talk about anything except my business or your fears. Just 2 people sharing a meal." He paused. "Please." The please destroyed her defenses. They walked to the cafe in September sunshine, Marcus trailing 20 feet behind like a well-dressed shadow. The place was small, tucked between tech startups and design firms, all exposed brick and reclaimed wood and the kind of carefully curated aesthetic that screamed seaport gentrification. Adrian clearly knew the owner, a small woman with silver hair who greeted him in what sounded like Portuguese and led them to a corner table without asking if they had reservations. "You have friends everywhere," Evelyn observed once they'd ordered. "I have connections everywhere. Friends are different." Adrian leaned back in his chair, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked almost relaxed. "Friends require trust. I don't trust easily." "But you trust that woman, the owner. Teresa saved my life once. Long time ago, different city. Trust like that doesn't expire." Evelyn wanted to ask how Teresa had saved him. From what? In which city? But Adrian's expression had shuttered closed, and she was learning to recognize the walls he built around certain topics. Instead, she asked, "Do you have family?" "No." Flat, final, no room for follow-up. "Everyone has someone." "I had someone. Past tense." Adrian's jaw tightened. "My parents are dead. I have no siblings. No extended family worth claiming. It's just me." The loneliness in those words hit Evelyn like physical force. She'd spent years feeling invisible, but she'd had her parents' distant support, Maya's friendship, the knowledge that people would notice if she disappeared. Adrian Voss existed in a vacuum of his own making. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Don't be. Solitude has advantages. No one to disappoint. No one to betray you." He looked at her then, really looked, and something in his expression cracked open. "Until you meet someone who makes you question whether solitude is survival or just slow death." Teresa arrived with food before Evelyn could respond. Sandwiches that smelled incredible and looked nothing like the cafe's Instagram-friendly menu suggested. She said something in Portuguese, smiled at Evelyn, and disappeared. "What did she say?" Evelyn asked. "That you have kind eyes and I should be careful not to break you." Adrian picked up his sandwich, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "I told her I'm trying very hard not to." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Evelyn's curiosity won. The men downstairs, the armed security, the vague answers about your business. She set down her sandwich carefully. "You're not just an importer, are you?" Adrian went very still. "No. Are you going to tell me what you really do?" "Eventually, when you're ready to hear it." He met her eyes with uncomfortable directness. "But not today. Today you still see me as someone worth knowing. I'd like to preserve that a little longer." "That's not reassuring." "It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be honest." Adrian reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I'm giving you time, Evelyn. Time to know me before you know what I am. That's more than I've given anyone in 10 years. "Why me?" "Because you see the truth in everything except yourself. Because your talent deserves more than wedding photography and corporate headshots. Because—" He paused, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. "Because when I look at you, I remember what it feels like to want something beyond power and control." Evelyn's breath caught. This was more than attraction, more than professional opportunity. This was Adrian Voss dismantling his own armor, piece by piece, and showing her the humanity underneath. And it was absolutely terrifying. Her phone rang, not a text this time, but an actual call. Maya's name flashed on screen. "I need to take this," Evelyn said apologetically. Adrian released her hand and gestured permission. Evelyn stepped outside the cafe, Marcus's watchful eyes tracking her movement. "Maya, I'm fine. Thank God. I was about to call the police." Maya's voice vibrated with relief and excitement. "How's mysterious warehouse man? Still hot? Still potentially dangerous?" "Both, definitely both. Details." "Now." Evelyn glanced through the cafe window. Adrian sat at their table, checking his phone, looking like every dark fantasy she'd ever had about dangerous men in expensive suits. "He got me a meeting with Catherine Moreau," she said quietly, "the gallery director. Maya, this could be everything. Or it could be a very pretty trap." "I know." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you're falling for a guy who has armed guards and won't tell you what he actually does for a living. That's like red flag city." "I know," Evelyn repeated, but the words felt hollow. She did know. She just didn't care enough to stop. "Babe, I love you, but be careful. Men like that, Men with secrets and power and that whole dangerous magnetism thing. They don't do regular relationships. They consume. And I don't want to watch you get swallowed. I'll be careful, Evelyn promised, knowing it was a lie. She returned to the table. Adrian looked up from his phone, his expression unreadable. Your friend is worried, he said. Statement, not question. She thinks you're dangerous. I am dangerous, but she's wrong about one thing. I don't want to consume you. Adrian stood, dropping cash on the table without checking the amount. I want to see what happens when you stop hiding. When you burn as bright as your talent deserves, even if that means burning away from me. They walked back to the warehouse in silence. Marcus maintained his 20-foot shadow. The September afternoon had turned golden, making Seaport look like a postcard of urban renewal. At the warehouse entrance, Adrian turned to her. Tomorrow night, I'm hosting an event, private, invitation only. Collectors, gallery owners, people who shape Boston's art world. His dark eyes held hers. Come with me. Let them see you. As what? Your photographer? Your... She couldn't finish the sentence. As yourself. Brilliant, talented, worthy of their attention. Adrian pulled a cream-colored envelope from his jacket and handed it to her. No pressure. If you come because you want to be seen. If you don't, I'll understand. Evelyn took the envelope. Heavy cardstock, probably cost more than her phone bill. What if I don't belong there? She whispered. You belong anywhere you choose to stand. Adrian leaned in, his lips barely brushing her temple, the first real touch since he'd taken her hand at dinner. Stop asking permission to exist, Evelyn. Take up space. Make them see you. Then he was gone, disappearing into the warehouse, leaving Evelyn standing alone on the sidewalk with an invitation burning in her hands and Maya's warnings echoing in her skull. That night, Evelyn edited photographs until her eyes ached. The warehouse images were some of her best work, dramatic, architectural, alive with light and shadow. She sent them to Adrian at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, unable to stop thinking about tomorrow's event. His response came 30 seconds later. Extraordinary. You see exactly what I hoped you would. The car will pick you up at 7 tomorrow. Wear something that makes you feel powerful. A. Evelyn stared at the message, her heart racing. She should decline, should establish boundaries, should listen to Maya's very reasonable concerns about dangerous men and unclear motives. Instead, she opened her closet and stared at the handful of dresses she owned, knowing none of them would work, knowing Adrian would probably send another gift, knowing she was falling into something she couldn't control. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Adrian. And Evelyn? Thank you for trusting me today. I know it wasn't easy. Sleep well. She didn't sleep well. She barely slept at all. The next morning brought another delivery. This time, a dress even more stunning than the last. Forest green silk that would make her eyes look darker, more mysterious. The kind of dress that commanded attention instead of apologizing for taking up space. Maya came over at noon, took one look at the dress, and sighed. You're going. I'm going. Even though he's clearly hiding something big and probably illegal? Even though... Maya sat on Evelyn's bed, her expression somewhere between concerned and resigned. Okay, but we're establishing ground rules. You text me every hour. You leave if anything feels wrong, and you do not, under any circumstances, go home with him. Maya, I'm serious, Ev. This guy is pulling you into his world fast and you're not thinking clearly. Promise me you'll be smart. Evelyn looked at her best friend, the one person who'd seen her through college heartbreaks and post-graduation struggles and every invisible moment in between, and nodded. I promise. It was the second lie she'd told in 2 days. The event was at Adrian's brownstone on Beacon Hill, and when Evelyn arrived at 7:30, the building glowed like something out of a dream. Every window blazed with light. Music drifted into the street, something classical and expensive. Valets parked cars that cost more than most people's houses. Evelyn stood on the sidewalk in her forest green dress and Maya's borrowed heels, suddenly paralyzed with fear. She didn't belong here. These weren't her people. This wasn't her world. Ms. Carter, Marcus appeared beside her. Apparently Adrian's bodyguard doubled as event security. He offered his arm with surprising gentleness. Mr. Voss is waiting for you, he said. Evelyn took his arm because turning back felt impossible. and together they climbed the brownstone steps into a world she'd only ever photographed from outside. The interior had been transformed. The art she'd admired days ago was joined by new pieces. Sculptures on pedestals, paintings lit by gallery spots, installations that turned rooms into experiences, and everywhere, people. Beautiful people in beautiful clothes, holding crystal glasses and discussing six-figure purchases like normal people discussed groceries. Adrian stood in the center of the front parlor, surrounded by admirers, looking like he'd been born to command attention. He wore black, of course he wore black, and the effect was devastating. But when he saw Evelyn, everything else disappeared. He excused himself mid-conversation and crossed the room in 5 strides. "You came," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "You knew I would." "I hoped." His eyes traveled over her dress, her face, her carefully applied makeup. "You're devastating. You sent the dress. I sent fabric. You made it art." He offered his hand. "Come. There are people you need to meet." The next 2 hours were a blur of introductions and champagne and conversations that felt both thrilling and completely surreal. Adrian introduced her to gallery owners who'd ignored her emails for months, collectors who nodded thoughtfully when he mentioned her architectural photography, critics who actually seemed interested when she described her process. And through it all, Adrian stayed close, not possessive, not controlling, but present, his hand at the small of her back, his voice in her ear, providing context about who these people were and what they valued, making her visible, making her matter. "You're good at this," Evelyn murmured during a rare moment alone. "At what?" "Making people feel important, seen." She looked up at him. "Is it real, or is it just strategy?" Adrian's expression went serious. "With them?" "Strategy. With you?" He touched her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Terrifyingly real." "Adrian, Mr. Voss." A woman's voice cut through the moment, sharp, French accented, deeply amused. "You didn't tell me you'd found her." Evelyn turned to find Catherine Moreau studying them both with the kind of interest that felt like being dissected. "Catherine." Adrian's hand dropped from Evelyn's face, but he didn't step away. "I was planning to make introductions later. Later is for people without vision. Now is better." Catherine extended her hand to Evelyn. "Catherine Moreau. I run the Moreau Gallery on Newbury Street. Adrian tells me you're extraordinary." Evelyn shook her hand, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "He's generous." "He's never generous. He's precise." Catherine's smile was sharp. "Show me your work. I'm having a coffee at my gallery tomorrow at 10. Bring your portfolio." It wasn't a request. "I'll be there," Evelyn said. "Good. Don't be late. I hate late." Catherine turned to Adrian. "You have excellent taste, as always. Try not to break this one." Then she was gone, disappearing into the crowd like smoke. Evelyn's hands shook. She set down her champagne before she dropped it. "Did that just happen?" she whispered. "That just happened." Adrian's smile was genuine, proud. "Catherine Moreau just invited you to show her your work. Do you understand what that means? That my entire career could change tomorrow. That your talent is finally being recognized." He took her hand, threading their fingers together. "This is what I wanted to give you. Not the introduction. You could have gotten that eventually, but the confidence to walk through the door, to believe you belong." Evelyn looked around the brownstone, at the art, the people, the world Adrian had built and was now sharing with her. She should feel grateful. She should feel excited. Instead, she felt the weight of debt, of obligation, of strings she couldn't see but knew existed. "What do you want from me, Adrian?" she asked quietly. "Really want?" His expression shifted into something raw and complicated. "I want you to be happy. I want your talent to shine. I want—" He paused, jaw tightening. "I want to be the kind of man who deserves someone like you. But I'm not sure I am." Before Evelyn could respond, a phone buzzed. Not hers, Adrian's. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor changed. The warmth vanished, replaced by something cold and lethal. "I need to take this," he said, already moving toward a side room. "Marcus will stay with you. I'll be back in 5 minutes." He disappeared, leaving Evelyn alone in a room full of strangers. Marcus materialized beside her, his expression professionally neutral. More champagne, Miss Carter? No, thank you. Evelyn scanned the crowd, looking for familiar faces, finding none. Everyone here existed in a world she didn't understand. Old money and new power and the kind of confidence that came from never doubting your right to space. She was about to excuse herself to find the bathroom when she overheard a conversation between two men near the sculpture display. Voss is expanding again. Heard he closed the Prague deal. Prague? I thought he was focused on the Atlantic routes. He's everywhere now. Shipments coming through Boston, New York, Miami. The man's building an empire. As long as customs doesn't look too closely. They laughed, low and knowing, then moved away. Evelyn's stomach twisted. Customs. Shipments. Routes. What exactly did Adrian Voss import? She pulled out her phone and texted Maya. Still alive, weird conversation overheard. We'll explain later. Maya's response came instantly. Get out if anything feels wrong. I mean it. But nothing felt wrong exactly. Just incomplete. Like she was seeing only the beautiful surface of something much darker underneath. Adrian returned 10 minutes later, his expression carefully neutral. Everything okay? Evelyn asked. Fine. Minor issue in New York. Handled. He touched her elbow. Ready to meet more people who can advance your career? He said it lightly, but Evelyn heard the unspoken message. This is what I'm giving you. Don't ask about the cost. She let him lead her through more introductions, more champagne, more conversations about art and photography, and opportunities that seemed too good to be true, because they probably were. By 11, Evelyn's feet ached and her smile felt painted on. Adrian noticed, of course he noticed, and quietly arranged for Marcus to bring the car around. You did beautifully tonight, he said as they stood in the brownstone's entrance, the party continuing behind them. Catherine Moreau doesn't meet with photographers she doesn't respect. You impressed her. You impressed her. I just showed up. You showed up and proved you belonged. There's a difference. Adrian stepped closer, close enough that Evelyn could smell his cologne and see the exhaustion behind his controlled facade. Can I see you again? After your meeting with Catherine. Adrian, I don't even know what we're doing, what this is. Neither do I. But I'd like to find out. His hand cupped her face, thumb stroking her cheekbone. If you'll let me. Evelyn should say no, should establish distance, should think clearly without his proximity scrambling her brain. Dinner, she heard herself say. After Catherine's. If it goes well. It'll go well. You're extraordinary. He leaned in, and for one breathless moment, Evelyn thought he'd kiss her. Instead, his lips brushed her forehead, tender, reverent, more intimate than any kiss. Text me when you get home safe. The car ride home felt like descending from altitude. Evelyn stared out the window at Boston's nighttime streets, her mind racing. She'd just stepped fully into Adrian Voss's world, met his people, accepted his help, let him touch her like she was something precious. And she still had no idea what he really did, what darkness lived beneath the beautiful surface. Her phone buzzed. Adrian. Thank you for tonight. You were perfect. Sleep well. And remember, tomorrow, you walk into that gallery as exactly who you are. Brilliant, talented, deserving. Don't let Catherine intimidate you. Evelyn typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on, thank you for everything. Good night. His response came immediately. Good night, Evelyn. Dream of possibilities. She did dream that night, but not of possibilities. She dreamed of customs agents and coded conversations, and a man with dark eyes who built empires from shadows while pulling her deeper into a world she didn't understand but couldn't resist. When she woke at dawn, drenched in sweat with her heart racing, one thought consumed her. She was falling in love with a man whose darkness she hadn't yet seen, and by the time she did, it might be too late to walk away. Catherine Moreau's gallery occupied a corner of Newbury Street where old Boston money met New World ambition. Evelyn stood outside at 9:50, portfolio clutched against her chest, trying to remember how to breathe. The gallery's windows displayed a single photograph, black and white, haunting, the kind of image that stopped pedestrians mid-stride. Evelyn recognized the photographer's name from art school, He'd been nobody then. Now his print sold for 6 figures. Catherine could do that. Catherine could transform careers with a single show, or destroy them with a single dismissal. Evelyn's phone buzzed. Adrian, you're going to be brilliant. Just be yourself. That's more than enough. She wanted to believe him, wanted to walk through those gallery doors with the confidence he seemed to think she deserved. Instead, she felt like a fraud in borrowed clothes, playing at belonging. The gallery door opened. Catherine stood in the entrance, impeccably dressed in black, her expression unreadable. "Miss Carter, you're early. I appreciate punctuality." She stepped aside. "Come." The gallery's interior was all white walls and perfect lighting, designed to make art the only thing that mattered. Catherine led Evelyn to a minimalist office in the back, gestured to a chair, and sat behind a glass desk that probably cost more than Evelyn's car. "Show me," Catherine said simply. Evelyn opened her portfolio with shaking hands. She'd spent until 3 a.m. selecting images, her best architectural work, the street photography that felt most alive, the moments of urban beauty she'd captured when no one was watching. Catherine studied each photograph in silence. Her expression revealed nothing. She turned pages slowly, methodically, taking her time. The silence stretched until Evelyn wanted to scream. Finally, Catherine looked up. "You have technical skill, excellent eye for composition. Your use of light is sophisticated." She paused. "But you're holding back." "I'm sorry?" "These photographs are beautiful, safe, competent." Catherine tapped one image, the Boston skyline at dawn. "This one is different. Here you took a risk. You let the fog obscure the obvious beauty and found something stranger, more honest. The rest?" She gestured at the portfolio. "The rest is you apologizing for your own vision." The words hit like a slap. "I don't understand," Evelyn managed. "You photograph the world as if you're afraid of offending it, as if you need permission to see what you see." Catherine leaned forward. "Adrian told me you were extraordinary. I see potential, but potential means nothing without courage." "What do you want me to do?" "Stop asking for permission. Stop hiding behind technical perfection. Show me work that terrifies you, work that reveals something true, even if it's ugly or uncomfortable or doesn't fit the pretty narrative people expect." Catherine closed the portfolio. "Come back in 2 weeks. Bring me 20 images that scare you, then we'll discuss whether you're ready for my gallery." It wasn't a rejection, but it wasn't acceptance either. "Thank you," Evelyn said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll be back." "Good. And Ms. Carter?" Catherine's expression softened fractionally. "Adrian doesn't recommend artists. Ever. Whatever he sees in you, it's real. Don't waste it by playing small." Evelyn left the gallery feeling simultaneously crushed and electrified. Catherine was right. She'd spent 3 years photographing beauty while avoiding truth, capturing moments without risking anything of herself. Her phone rang as she reached the street. Adrian's name flashed on screen. "How did it go?" he asked without preamble. "She wants me to come back, with work that scares me." "Perfect." Adrian sounded genuinely pleased. "Catherine only challenges people worth challenging. She saw your potential. She saw me playing safe." "Then stop playing safe." His voice turned softer. "I'm at the warehouse. Come here. We'll talk about what scares you, and then I'm taking you to dinner as promised." Evelyn should go home, should process Catherine's feedback alone, should establish boundaries between her career and whatever was happening with Adrian. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said instead. The warehouse felt different in daylight, less mysterious, more functional. Marcus let her in without comment, and Evelyn took the industrial elevator to the 6th floor, her portfolio still clutched against her chest like armor. Adrian stood at the windows overlooking the harbor, phone pressed to his ear, speaking that same language she didn't recognize. He turned when the elevator doors opened, his expression shifting from cold business to something warmer. He ended the call without ceremony. "Evelyn." He crossed the space between them, and she saw the exhaustion etched around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. "Tell me everything." So she did. Catherine's assessment, the challenge to return with honest work, the feeling of being simultaneously seen and exposed. Adrian listened without interrupting, his dark eyes never leaving her face. "She's right," he said when Evelyn finished. You do hold back. I've seen it in your work. Brilliant technique wrapped around carefully controlled emotion. Like you're afraid of what might happen if you let yourself feel too much. That's not... Evelyn started to protest, then stopped. Because he was right. She'd spent years photographing other people's emotions while keeping her own locked down tight. Safe. Invisible. What scares you, Evelyn? Adrian asked quietly. Everything about this. You. What I'm feeling. The fact that I'm standing in your world and I still don't know what you really do, or why men at your party talk about customs and shipments like they're discussing the weather. Something flickered in Adrian's eyes. Approval, maybe, or respect. Ask me, he said. Ask me directly what you want to know. Evelyn's heart hammered. This was the moment. The line between ignorance and knowledge, between the beautiful surface and whatever darkness waited underneath. What do you import, Adrian? Really import? He held her gaze for a long moment. Then he walked to his desk, unlocked a drawer, and pulled out a folder. I import many things. Art, primarily. Antiquities. Pieces that collectors want but can't acquire through legal channels. He opened the folder, revealing photographs of paintings and sculptures. Museums have strict rules about provenance. Governments have laws about cultural heritage. I provide an alternative market. You smuggle stolen art. The words came out flat. I acquire pieces whose ownership is disputed and sell them to people who value beauty over bureaucracy. Adrian's tone never changed, calm, factual, completely unapologetic. Sometimes those pieces were taken during wars. Sometimes they've been lost for decades. Sometimes they're simply too valuable for their current owners to appreciate properly. Evelyn stared at the photographs. A Renaissance painting, an Egyptian sculpture, a jade carving that looked ancient and priceless. That's theft. That's preservation. I've saved more art from destruction and neglect than most museums. Adrian closed the folder. I won't apologize for what I do, but I won't lie to you either. You wanted truth. This is truth. And the customs conversations I overheard, the shipments, how I move inventory, carefully, quietly, through channels that don't involve official scrutiny. He paused. I have people in ports, warehouses, transport companies, people who value money more than rules. You're a criminal. I'm a businessman who operates outside legal constraints. The distinction matters to me, if not to you. Evelyn should leave, should run from this man and his beautiful warehouse and his empire built on theft and corruption. Instead, she asked, Is anyone getting hurt in your business? Adrian's expression darkened. I don't deal in drugs or weapons or people. I move art and antiquities, objects, not lives. That's my line. But you have bodyguards. You carry a gun. I've seen the holster under your jacket. You speak in code and keep half your building locked down. Evelyn's voice rose. Don't tell me your business is bloodless. It's not bloodless. I've made enemies. Competitors who want my roots and clients. Governments who want me stopped. I protect myself and what's mine. He moved closer, his voice dropping. But I have never hurt an innocent person. Never. That's the line I won't cross. And if I walk away right now, if I decide this is too much, then Marcus drives you home and you never hear from me again. Adrian's jaw tightened. I won't chase you, Evelyn. I won't manipulate or threaten or try to change your mind. You deserve the choice I've never given anyone else. Complete honesty and complete freedom to walk away. The offer hung between them like a test. Evelyn looked around the warehouse, this beautiful space filled with stolen beauty, built on broken laws and quiet corruption. She thought about the art on Adrian's walls, the connections he'd offered, the way he'd made her feel visible for the first time in years. She thought about Catherine's challenge, work that scares you, truth instead of performance. Show me, Evelyn heard herself say. Adrian's eyes widened fractionally. Show you what? Everything, the real warehouse, the inventory you keep locked away, your actual business. She lifted her camera from her bag. I want to photograph the truth, not the pretty parts. All of it. For a long moment, Adrian simply stared at her. Then something shifted in his expression, surprise giving way to something that looked almost like hope. You understand what you're asking? If you see my business, if you document it, you become complicit. There's no walking away clean after that. I'm tired of clean. Clean got me nowhere. Evelyn raised her camera. You said you wanted me to stop playing safe, so show me what that looks like. Adrian pulled out his phone and sent a brief text. 30 seconds later, Marcus appeared from the elevator. Take Ms. Carter through the lower floors, Adrian said. All of them. Answer her questions. Let her photograph whatever she wants. Marcus's expression didn't change, but Evelyn saw surprise flicker in his eyes. Sir, are you certain? I'm certain. She wants truth. Give it to her. Marcus nodded once and gestured to the elevator. This way, Ms. Carter. Evelyn followed, her heart racing, very aware that she was crossing a line she couldn't uncross. The elevator descended to the first floor, and when the doors opened, Evelyn stepped into a different world. The warehouse floor stretched vast and organized, filled with crates and equipment and people moving with purposeful efficiency. But it wasn't the activity that stopped her breath. It was what she saw being unpacked. Paintings wrapped in protective covering, sculptures crated in custom boxes, artifacts that looked like they belonged in museums, being cataloged and photographed by workers in white gloves. We process everything here, Marcus said quietly. Verify authenticity, document condition, prepare for transport to buyers. Mr. Voss runs a tight operation. Everything is recorded, insured, handled with care. Even though it's all stolen, Evelyn whispered. Acquired. Mr. Voss doesn't work with thieves directly. He purchases from sellers who may or may not have clear title, then moves pieces to buyers who don't ask questions. Marcus paused. It's a gray market, Ms. Carter. Not black. There's a difference. Evelyn raised her camera and started shooting. The workers handling priceless art with casual expertise. The contrast between industrial warehouse and museum-quality artifacts. The strange beauty of illegal commerce conducted with meticulous care. Marcus led her through the second floor. More storage, climate-controlled rooms filled with paintings and sculptures waiting for buyers. The third floor held offices where people worked on computers, managing what looked like sophisticated logistics software. We track every piece, Marcus explained. Origin, acquisition date, current location, buyer interest. Mr. Voss may operate outside the law, but he runs this business like a legitimate enterprise. Better than most legitimate enterprises, actually. They reached the fourth floor, and Marcus paused at a locked door. This is the archive. Mr. Voss's private collection. Pieces he's acquired but won't sell. Things he's preserving for... Marcus stopped. I'm not sure I should show you this without asking him first. Then ask him. Marcus made a brief phone call, speaking too quietly for Evelyn to hear. Then he unlocked the door. The archive took Evelyn's breath away. It was a gallery more beautiful than Catherine's, filled with art that belonged in textbooks. A Caravaggio that museums claimed lost. Egyptian reliefs that should have been in Cairo. Chinese scrolls that were definitely cultural treasures. He saves the best pieces, Marcus said quietly. Things too important to sell. Mr. Voss believes some art transcends ownership. These pieces, he's preserving them until they can return home properly. Legally. When politics and time allow. He's planning to give them back? Evelyn lowered her camera, stunned. Eventually. Some of these pieces were taken during wars, revolutions, chaos. Their original owners are dead. Their countries are unstable. Mr. Voss keeps them safe until they can go home without being destroyed or lost again. Marcus's expression softened. He's not a good man, Miss Carter, but he's not entirely bad either. Evelyn photographed the archive with shaking hands. This changed everything. Adrian Voss wasn't just a smuggler. He was something more complicated. A criminal with a code. A thief who preserved what he stole. Gray, not black, just like Marcus said. They returned to the sixth floor an hour later. Adrian sat at his desk working on a laptop, but he looked up immediately when the elevator opened. Well? He asked simply. Evelyn set down her camera and crossed to where he sat. She should be angry, should be horrified, should demand he take her home immediately. Instead, she leaned against his desk and asked, "The pieces in the archive, you're really planning to return them?" "When it's safe. When it's right." Adrian closed his laptop. "I'm not a hero, Evelyn. I profit from the gray market. But I also believe some things matter more than profit. Beauty, history, cultural heritage. Those pieces deserve better than to be sold to billionaires who will lock them in private vaults. So you lock them in your private vault instead. I preserve them until they can go home. It's not perfect, but it's better than the alternative: destruction, loss, or permanent disappearance into collections no one will ever see. Evelyn studied his face, looking for the lie, finding only complicated truth. You could have hidden this from me, she said quietly. Could have kept showing me the beautiful parts and never let me see the business underneath. I could have. But you asked for truth, and I'm tired of performing. Adrian stood, moving close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he carried. I wanted you to see all of it, the crime and the justification, the profit and the preservation. Then decide whether I'm someone worth knowing. And if I decide you're not, then I lose something I didn't know I needed until I met you. His hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. I've spent 10 years building this empire alone, trusting no one, wanting nothing beyond control and power. Then you walked into that wedding with your camera, and suddenly I wanted more. Wanted to be seen, not feared. Wanted someone to look at me and see possibility instead of threat. Evelyn's breath caught. This was more than confession. This was vulnerability from a man who'd built walls so high she doubted anyone had ever scaled them. I see you, she whispered. The crime and the care, the darkness and the preservation. I see all of it, Adrian, and I'm terrified of what that means. So am I. He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. I'm terrified I'll destroy you, that my world will consume the beautiful, honest thing you are. That one day you'll look at me and see only the criminal, not the man. Then don't let that happen. Evelyn's hands found his chest, feeling his heartbeat through expensive cotton. You said you wanted me to stop playing safe. So don't play safe with me either. Show me who you are, all of it. Let me decide what I can handle. Adrian pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. This isn't a game, Evelyn. My world has consequences, enemies, danger. Once you're truly in it, extraction becomes nearly impossible. Then it's a good thing I'm not planning to extract. The words hung between them for one breathless moment. Then Adrian kissed her. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't the tender brush of lips he'd given her before. This was hunger and desperation, and everything they'd been holding back since the moment they met. His hands tangled in her hair, her fingers clutched his shirt. And the world narrowed to just this: heat and want and the terrifying feeling of falling into something neither of them could control. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers again. I should take you to dinner, he said, his voice rough. That's what I promised. Later. Evelyn's hand slid up to his face, holding him close. Right now, I want to photograph you, the real you, not the performance you give everyone else. Something vulnerable flickered in Adrian's eyes. Why? Because Catherine said I need to create work that scares me. And you. She paused, letting herself admit the truth. You terrify me more than anything I've ever wanted. Adrian stepped back, and for a moment Evelyn thought she'd pushed too far. Then he shrugged off his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms marked with scars she'd never noticed before. Where do you want me? He asked quietly. Evelyn spent the next hour photographing Adrian Voss in ways no one had ever been allowed to see him. Standing at the windows with Boston Harbor spread behind him, his expression unguarded and almost sad. Sitting at his desk surrounded by paperwork that documented his illegal empire. Leaning against exposed brick, arms crossed, looking every inch the dangerous man he claimed to be. But the photograph that would haunt her later, the one that captured something true and terrible, was the simplest. Adrian staring directly at the camera, his dark eyes holding secrets and something that might have been hope. No smile, no performance, just a man allowing himself to be seen. When Evelyn finally lowered her camera, her hands were shaking. Did you get what you needed? Adrian asked. I got truth. Evelyn looked at the images on her camera's display. I don't know if it's what Catherine wants, but it's honest. Then it's perfect. Adrian crossed to where she stood and took her hand. Now let me feed you. I know a place that makes the best ossobuco in Boston, and I've been thinking about watching you eat it since this morning. They went to a small Italian restaurant in the North End. The kind of place with plastic tablecloths and family recipes and absolutely zero pretension. The owner greeted Adrian in Italian, hugged him like a son, and ushered them to a corner table. Over wine and pasta and the promised osso buco, they talked, really talked. Adrian told her about growing up in Prague, losing his parents in a car accident at 19, building his business from desperation and anger, and the need to control something when everything else had spun out of control. Evelyn told him about her suburban Connecticut childhood, her parents' disappointment when she chose art over law school, the years of feeling invisible while everyone around her seemed to matter. "We're both trying to prove we exist," Adrian said quietly, his fingers threading through hers across the table. "You with your camera, me with my empire. Both of us terrified we'll disappear if we stop creating evidence of our presence." That's depressing. That's honest. He smiled, and it transformed his face into something younger, less guarded. "But maybe we don't have to prove it alone anymore." Evelyn's phone buzzed, Maya checking in for the third time that day. She glanced at it, then silenced it. "Your friend is worried," Adrian observed. "She thinks you're dangerous." "I am dangerous, but not to you. Never to you." He paused. "Though I understand her concern, you're falling into my world fast, and I'm not making it easy to keep perspective. Maybe I don't want perspective. Maybe I want to fall." Evelyn met his eyes. "That terrifies Maya. It terrifies me, but I'm doing it anyway." "Why?" "Because you see me. Because you make me feel like I matter. Because—" She stopped, not ready to say the rest. Not ready to admit she was falling in love with a criminal who smuggled art and kept armed guards and somehow still managed to make her feel safer than she'd ever felt before. Adrian's expression softened into something that looked almost like pain. "Evelyn?" His phone rang, shattering the moment. He glanced at it, frowned, and sent the call to voicemail. It rang again immediately. "I should take this," he said apologetically. "It's my contact in New York. He wouldn't call twice unless it was urgent." "Go ahead." Adrian stepped outside, phone pressed to his ear. Through the restaurant's window, Evelyn watched his expression shift from irritated to concerned to something harder, more dangerous. When he returned 3 minutes later, the warmth had vanished. "I need to go to New York, tonight. There's a problem with a shipment." He pulled out his wallet and dropped cash on the table, far more than their meal cost. "Marcus will take you home. I'm sorry. This isn't how I wanted tonight to end." "Is everything okay?" "It will be." But the tension in his jaw suggested otherwise. "I'll call you tomorrow. And Evelyn?" He cupped her face, his touch gentle despite the steel in his eyes. "Be careful. My world is complicated, and not everyone in it is as principled as I try to be. If anything feels wrong, if anyone approaches you, call Marcus immediately. You're scaring me." "Good. Fear keeps you safe." He kissed her forehead, quick and fierce. "I'll see you soon." Then he was gone, disappearing into the night, leaving Evelyn alone with half-finished wine and questions she couldn't answer. Marcus appeared 5 minutes later and drove her home in silence. When they reached her building, he turned in his seat to face her. "Mr. Voss cares about you," he said quietly. "More than I've seen him care about anyone in 10 years. But his business attracts attention, not all of it friendly. Be alert. Be smart. And if you see anything unusual, call me." He handed her a card with a single phone number. "What kind of unusual?" "People watching your apartment. Cars that follow you. Anyone asking questions about Mr. Voss or his business." Marcus's expression was grim. "His enemies know he's been seen with you. That makes you a potential target." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "You're saying I'm in danger?" "I'm saying be careful. Mr. Voss has protected you so far by keeping you separate from his business. But after today, after you saw the warehouse," he paused, "you're not separate anymore. You're involved, and that changes everything." Evelyn climbed the stairs to her apartment feeling like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. She'd thought seeing Adrian's business would give her clarity, would help her understand what she was getting into. Instead, it had pulled her deeper into a world where art smuggling attracted enemies and bodyguards, gave warnings about being followed, and the man she was falling for kept secrets that could get people killed. Maya was waiting in her apartment, having used the spare key Evelyn had given her years ago. "Where the hell have you been?" Maya demanded. You were supposed to text every hour. I've been freaking out. I was with Adrian at his warehouse, then dinner. Evelyn collapsed on her couch. Maya, I need to tell you something. She told her everything. The art smuggling, the archive of stolen pieces, the gray market, and the complicated morality and the way Adrian had let her see all of it without trying to hide or justify. Maya listened in silence, her expression shifting from concern to horrified to something that might have been reluctant understanding. So he's a criminal who thinks he's Robin Hood, Maya said finally. More or less. And you're in love with him. Evelyn started to deny it, then stopped. Because it was true. Somewhere between the first meeting and tonight's confession, she'd fallen completely, terrifyingly in love with Adrian Voss. Yes. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. Okay. I can't support this. I think you're making a massive mistake. But I also know that look in your eyes. And I know you're doing this no matter what I say. She grabbed Evelyn's hands. So I'm going to be here. I'm going to make sure you stay safe. And when this all inevitably explodes, I'm going to help you pick up the pieces. You think it's going to explode? Babe, you're dating an art smuggler who has armed guards and enemies and operates in constant danger. Of course it's going to explode. The question is whether you survive the blast. Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to insist that Adrian would protect her, that his world wasn't as dangerous as it seemed, that love could somehow make all of this work. But deep down, she knew Maya was right. She'd stepped into Adrian's world with her eyes open, and now there was no going back. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should be more careful about the company you keep, Ms. Carter. Adrian Voss is a dangerous man. A friend. Evelyn's blood ran cold. Maya, she said quietly, showing her friend the message. What do I do? Maya stared at the text, her face pale. You call Adrian, right now. But when Evelyn tried Adrian's number, it went straight to voicemail. Same with Marcus. They were both unreachable, somewhere in New York dealing with problems Evelyn didn't understand, while she sat in her apartment with a threatening text from someone who knew her name and knew about Adrian. We should call the police, Maya said. And tell them what? That the criminal I'm dating might have enemies who are threatening me? Evelyn shook her head. That'll go great. Then what? Evelyn looked at the text again, her mind racing. Someone was watching her. Someone knew about Adrian. Someone wanted her scared. And Adrian wasn't here to protect her. For the first time since meeting him, Evelyn truly understood what Marcus had meant. She wasn't separate from Adrian's world anymore. She was in it, completely, dangerously. And there was no walking away clean. She saved Marcus's number, forwarded him the threatening text, and tried to breathe through the fear crawling up her throat. Tomorrow, she'd deal with this. Tomorrow, she'd demand answers from Adrian about who his enemies were and what kind of danger she'd walked into. Tonight, she just needed to survive until morning. Maya stayed, sleeping on the couch, keeping watch like the loyal friend she'd always been. And Evelyn lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if falling in love with Adrian Voss was the bravest thing she'd ever done, or the stupidest mistake of her life. Adrian appeared at Evelyn's door at 6 a.m., looking like he'd fought a war and lost. Blood stained his white shirt collar, his knuckles were raw and bruised, and his eyes held a darkness that made Evelyn step back instinctively when she opened the door. What happened to you? She breathed. Let me in, please. His voice was rough, exhausted, threaded with something that might have been pain. Evelyn hesitated for just a second, long enough for Adrian's expression to shutter closed, long enough for him to turn away, before she grabbed his arm and pulled him inside. Maya sat up on the couch, took one look at Adrian's bloodied state, and reached for her phone. Don't, Adrian said quietly. No police, no hospitals. I just need... He swayed slightly, catching himself against the wall. You need a doctor, Evelyn said, her photographer's eye cataloging his injuries with clinical precision. Bruised ribs, judging by how carefully he moved, split knuckles, a cut above his left eyebrow that had bled down the side of his face and dried there. I need you to trust me. Adrian's dark eyes found hers. Please, Evelyn, just trust me for the next hour, and then I'll explain everything. Maya made a disgusted sound. This is insane. He shows up bleeding at 6 in the morning, and you're actually considering bathroom, Evelyn interrupted, her decision made. Come on. She led Adrian to her tiny bathroom, made him sit on the closed toilet, and started assessing the damage with shaking hands. The cut above his eyebrow was deep but clean. His knuckles were abraded but not broken. But when she touched his ribs, he flinched. Broken? She asked. Cracked, maybe. I've had worse. He caught her hand as she reached for the first aid kit. I got your message. The text from the unknown number. Marcus forwarded it to me in New York. Is that why you're here? Why you're hurt? Part of it. Adrian's jaw tightened. The problem in New York wasn't just a shipment issue. It was an ambush. Someone tried to intercept my inventory and send a message. What kind of message? The kind delivered with fists and threats about leaving the Northeast market or facing consequences. He gestured at his battered face. I declined their suggestion. Evelyn cleaned the cut above his eyebrow with antiseptic, trying to keep her hand steady. Who were they? Competitors, a group that wants my roots and clients. They've been circling for months, looking for weakness. Adrian's eyes never left her face. They found it when I started seeing you, when I brought you into my world, when I stopped being careful about keeping you separate. The words hit like a physical blow. You're saying I'm your weakness? You're the first thing I've cared about in 10 years that isn't business or control or survival. That makes you leverage. He caught her wrist gently. That text you received. It wasn't random. It was them, letting me know they've identified you as someone who matters to me. So what does that mean? Evelyn's voice came out steadier than she felt. They're going to hurt me to get to you? Not if I eliminate the threat first. The coldness in Adrian's tone made her stomach twist. I handled the situation in New York, permanently. But there are others. There are always others. Maya appeared in the bathroom doorway, arms crossed. Okay, I've heard enough. Evelyn, you need to end this right now. This man just admitted people are targeting you because of him. That's not romance, that's danger. She's right, Adrian said quietly, surprising them both. You should end this. Walk away while you still can. I'll make sure you're protected. Guards, new apartment if necessary, monitoring until the threats dissipate. But you'd be safer without me. Evelyn looked at him. This dangerous, complicated man who'd crashed into her life and turned everything upside down, bloodied and bruised from defending his empire, offering her an exit even though it clearly cost him something to do it. Is that what you want? She asked. For me to walk away? I want you safe. If that means losing you, then yes. But his eyes told a different story, desperate, hungry, silently begging her to stay even as he offered her freedom. Evelyn turned to Maya. Can you give us a minute? Please. Maya left, but not before shooting Adrian a look that promised violence if anything happened to her friend. Evelyn finished cleaning Adrian's wounds in silence, applied butterfly bandages to the cut above his eyebrow, wrapped his abraded knuckles in gauze, made him lift his shirt so she could check his ribs, bruised purple-black, painful, but probably not broken. You should see a real doctor, she said finally. I've survived worse without one. That's not reassuring. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, suddenly exhausted. Tell me the truth, Adrian. How bad is this? How much danger am I actually in? He was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was raw with honesty. Right now, minimal. I made my point in New York, sent a clear message about what happens to people who threaten what's mine. But my world is violent, Evelyn. Competitors will always test boundaries. Law enforcement will always circle. And anyone close to me becomes a potential target or asset. So this is my life now? Looking over my shoulder? Waiting for the next threat? If you stay with me, yes. That's the reality I can't change. Adrian reached for her hand. But I can protect you. Guards when you need them. Security systems. Teaching you to recognize danger. I won't let anyone hurt you, Evelyn. I swear it. You can't promise that. You can't control everything. I can try. His fingers tightened on hers. I've built an empire on control and calculation. I can extend that protection to you, but only if you want it. Only if you choose this life knowing exactly what it costs. Evelyn studied their joined hands, her small and pale. his bruised and scarred, evidence of two completely different worlds trying to merge. "What happened to the people who sent that text?" she asked quietly. Adrian's expression went cold. "They won't be sending any more messages." "Did you kill them?" "I eliminated the immediate threat. How I did that isn't something you need to carry." He cupped her face with his uninjured hand. "This is what I meant about my world having sharp edges. I do things, violent things, final things, to protect what matters to me. If that makes me a monster in your eyes, I understand. But I won't apologize for keeping you safe." Evelyn should be horrified, should recoil from this man who spoke so casually about violence and elimination and permanent solutions. Instead, she felt something shift inside her, some final wall crumbling, some last defense falling away. "I'm not walking away," she heard herself say. Adrian's eyes widened. "Evelyn, I'm not walking away," she repeated, stronger this time. "But I need you to promise me something. No more secrets. No more protecting me from the truth. If there's danger, I want to know. If you have enemies, I want to know their names. If this life we're building has costs, I want to know exactly what I'm paying. You're asking me to make you complicit. I'm asking you to make me a partner." She moved closer, her hands finding his face, careful of his injuries. "You said you saw me, that you recognized something in me worth nurturing. Well, I see you too, all of you, the criminal and the protector, the violence and the care. And I'm choosing it. I'm choosing you, but I need you to choose me back, fully, honestly, no more holding back." For a long moment, Adrian simply stared at her. Then he pulled her against him, ignoring his cracked ribs, burying his face in her hair. "I've never wanted anything the way I want you," he whispered against her neck. "It terrifies me, makes me weak, makes me vulnerable in ways I swore I'd never be again." "Then be vulnerable with me. Let me be vulnerable with you. We'll figure out how to survive it together." Adrian pulled back just enough to kiss her, desperate and gentle and tasting like blood, and something that might have been tears. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "No more secrets," he said, "starting now. Ask me anything." "The archive, the pieces you're preserving to return someday, is that real or was it a story to make you seem less criminal?" "It's real. I have contacts in museums, cultural heritage organizations, governments. When the political situation stabilizes, when return becomes possible without the pieces being destroyed or disappearing again, I'll facilitate it. Anonymously, carefully, but genuinely." "Why? Why not just sell them and keep the profit?" Adrian's expression turned distant. "Because my parents were art historians, professors in Prague who spent their lives preserving cultural heritage. They died trying to protect a collection during political unrest. I watched them choose beauty over safety, and it destroyed them." His voice roughened. "I can't be them. Can't sacrifice myself for noble causes. But I can preserve what they would have protected. It's the only good thing I do in a life built on moral compromise." Evelyn's heart cracked open. This was the vulnerability beneath the armor, grief and guilt, and a desperate need to honor the parents he'd lost by continuing their work in his own twisted way. "They'd be proud of you," she said softly. "They'd be horrified by what I've become. But maybe—" He paused. "Maybe they'd understand the preservation part, the care I take with the pieces, the fact that I haven't let pure profit corrupt that one principle." "That's not nothing, Adrian. It's not enough either. But it's what I have." He stood carefully, wincing at his ribs. "I should go. Let you get ready for your day. And I need to make some calls, ensure the New York situation stays resolved." "Stay." The word was out before Evelyn could think better of it. "Maya can leave for work. You can shower, rest. I'll make breakfast. And then we'll figure out what comes next." "Your friend already wants to murder me." "She'll get over it, eventually." Evelyn managed a weak smile. "Besides, I'm not letting you walk out of here until I know you're actually okay. Those ribs need ice, and you need sleep." Adrian's resistance crumbled visibly. "A few hours, then I need to deal with business." Maya was less than thrilled when Evelyn explained Adrian would be staying, but she left for work with a warning whispered in Evelyn's ear. "If he hurts you, I'm calling every cop in Boston and explaining exactly what he does for a living." After Maya left, Evelyn made Adrian shower while she changed the blood-stained sheets on her bed and found ice for his ribs. When he emerged 20 minutes later, clean and wearing borrowed sweatpants that were too short and a t-shirt that was too tight, he looked younger, more human, less like the controlled criminal and more like a man who'd survived a brutal night. "Bed," Evelyn ordered. "I'll bring you ice and food." "I don't take orders well," Adrian said, but he was already moving toward her bedroom. "Get used to it. If we're doing this, if we're really being partners, you don't get to be in control all the time." Something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. "You're dangerous when you're assertive." "Good. You should be a little afraid of me." Adrian collapsed on her bed with a groan that suggested his ribs hurt worse than he'd admitted. Evelyn brought ice wrapped in a towel, made him hold it against his side, then disappeared into the kitchen to make eggs and toast. When she returned 15 minutes later with food, Adrian was asleep, sprawled across her bed, like exhaustion had finally won the battle against control. His face was peaceful in a way she'd never seen, vulnerable, young, beautiful in the morning light filtering through her curtains. Evelyn set down the food and grabbed her camera. She photographed him sleeping, not for any exhibition or portfolio, but for herself. Evidence that this moment was real. That Adrian Voss had crashed into her life bloody and bruised and trusting her enough to let his guard down completely. When she finally lowered the camera, tears were streaming down her face. This was what Catherine had meant. Work that scared her. Truth instead of performance. Raw emotion instead of careful composition. She'd photographed love and violence and vulnerability all in one frame. Adrian slept for 3 hours. Evelyn worked beside him, editing the photographs she'd taken at his warehouse, preparing her portfolio for Catherine's return visit. The images were different than anything she'd created before. Darker, more honest, capturing the strange beauty of illegal commerce conducted with care. When Adrian finally woke, disoriented and reaching for a weapon that wasn't there, Evelyn was ready with reheated food and coffee. "You let me sleep," he said, his voice rough. "You needed it. How are the ribs?" "Better. Still hurt, but manageable." He sat up carefully, accepting the coffee. "Thank you for letting me stay. For not running when you had every reason to." "I told you I'm not running." Evelyn sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "But I need to understand something. The violence in New York, will there be consequences? Police investigation? Retaliation from other competitors?" Adrian was quiet for a moment, considering his words. "I was careful. The people who ambushed me weren't innocent victims. They were criminals who chose violence first. Their organization will get the message and back off, at least temporarily. As for police," he shrugged, "I have people who handle cleanup, evidence disposal. There won't be an investigation. You have people who cover up murders. I have people who protect my business. Sometimes that involves making problems disappear." His dark eyes met hers. "I won't lie to you, Evelyn. This is what my world looks like. Violence when necessary, corruption when useful, moral compromise as standard practice. If you can't accept that, walk away now before you're in too deep." "I think I'm already in too deep." She gestured at him in her bed, in her apartment, wearing her clothes. "This is pretty deep, Adrian. This is surface level. Deep is when you meet my business partners. When you attend events where everyone in the room is operating outside the law. When you realize the people I do business with make me look principled by comparison." He set down his coffee. "I can still protect you from that. Keep you separate. Let you have a relationship with me without drowning in the details of my empire. And if I don't want protection, if I want to understand your whole world, then you'll see things you can't unsee. Meet people who'll terrify you. Learn exactly how much blood is required to build an empire like mine." Adrian's voice dropped. "I'm trying to preserve your innocence, Evelyn. Once you lose it, you can't get it back." "Maybe I don't want innocence. Maybe I want truth." She took his hand, threading their fingers together. "You keep trying to protect me from yourself. But I'm choosing you anyway. Stop fighting it." Adrian pulled her against him, careful of his ribs, holding her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. "You're going to regret this. Someday, you'll look at me and see only the monster, and it'll destroy us both. Or someday, I'll look at you and see exactly who you are, monster and man, criminal and protector, and love you anyway." The words came out before Evelyn could stop them. I already do. Love you, I mean. I know it's too fast and too complicated and probably completely insane, but I do. Adrian went very still. Then he cupped her face, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones, his expression raw with something that looked like pain and hope tangled together. I love you, he said, each word deliberate, final. I've loved you since I watched you photograph that wedding, seeing beauty everyone else ignored. I love your talent and your kindness and the way you apologize for taking up space when you should be demanding it. I love, his voice cracked. I love that you see me and stay anyway, that you're brave enough to choose this life knowing exactly how dark it gets. Evelyn kissed him then, soft and slow and tasting like coffee, and promises neither of them could guarantee they'd keep. When they finally broke apart, Adrian's phone was ringing. He glanced at it and sighed. Marcus, I need to take this. Go ahead. Adrian answered in that language Evelyn still couldn't identify, his tone shifting from soft to hard in seconds. The conversation lasted 3 minutes, sharp, tense, ending with what sounded like an order. Problem? Evelyn asked when he hung up. Always, but nothing urgent. Adrian stood carefully, testing his ribs. I need to get back to the warehouse, handle some logistics, but tonight, he paused. There's a dinner, business associates, potential clients, the kind of event where I make deals and build relationships. I want you there with me. As your photographer? As my partner, the woman I love, the person who stands beside me in my world, not behind me. His expression was serious. But I need you to understand what you'll be walking into. These people aren't art collectors and gallery owners. They're criminals, Evelyn. Some sophisticated, some brutal, all operating in the shadows. If you come, you'll be complicit. There's no pretending innocence after you've broken bread with them. This was the moment. The final choice between the safe life she'd known and the dangerous one Adrian offered. Evelyn thought about Catherine's challenge. Work that scares you. Truth instead of performance. She thought about the photographs she'd taken in Adrian's warehouse. Beauty built on crime, preservation funded by theft. She thought about the fact that she was falling in love with a man whose world required violence to survive. What time should I be ready? She asked. Adrian's smile was sharp and sad and absolutely devastating. 7. I'll send a car. And Evelyn? He pulled her close one more time. After tonight, there's no going back. You'll know too much. Be too involved. The law will consider you an accessory. My enemies will consider you a target. Your entire life will change. Then it's a good thing I'm ready for a change. She kissed him quickly. Go handle your business. I'll see you tonight. After Adrian left, Evelyn spent the day preparing for the evening like she was preparing for war. She called Catherine and rescheduled their meeting, claimed a family emergency, promised to deliver the photographs next week. Catherine, surprisingly understanding, simply said, take your time. Good work requires emotional honesty. Come back when you're ready to bleed on camera. Bleed on camera. That was exactly what Evelyn had been doing, photographing her own heartbreaking and reforming around a dangerous man in his impossible world. Maya called at lunch, demanding updates. He stayed at your place? Please tell me you didn't sleep with him while he was covered in blood like some kind of vampire romance. We didn't sleep together. He slept. I photographed him sleeping. Then we confessed our love, and he invited me to a criminal dinner party. Evelyn said it all in one breath, knowing how insane it sounded. You what? Maya's voice pitched high enough to probably shatter glass. Ev, this is spiraling. You need to pump the brakes before you end up arrested or dead or both. I know it sounds crazy. It doesn't sound crazy. It is crazy. You're a photographer, not a mob wife. This isn't your world. Maybe it is now. Evelyn stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. Maybe I'm tired of playing it safe. Tired of being invisible. Tired of letting fear make my decisions. There's a difference between taking risks and jumping off a cliff. And maybe I'm ready to jump. The words settled in Evelyn's chest like truth. I love him, Maya. I know you think I'm being reckless and stupid and blinded by good looks and danger, but I love him. And he loves me, and I'm choosing to see where this goes. Maya was quiet for a long time. Then she sighed, deep, resigned, the sound of a friend accepting defeat. Okay. But I'm going to be here. I'm going to keep checking on you. And when this all inevitably crashes, I'm going to help you survive. Because that's what friends do. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you're still alive in 6 months. Maya paused. What are you wearing to this criminal dinner party? Despite everything, Evelyn laughed. I have no idea. The dress arrived at 5 p.m. Midnight black silk that looked like sin and elegance had a baby. Simple, sophisticated, the kind of dress that announced you belonged in rooms where laws were suggestions and morality was negotiable. Adrian had included a note in his precise handwriting. Wear this and nothing else. You'll be the most beautiful woman in the room, and I want everyone to know you're mine. A possessive, arrogant, absolutely true. Evelyn dressed carefully, applied makeup that made her eyes look darker and more mysterious, and tried to calm her racing heart. At 7 exactly, the car arrived. Not Marcus this time, but another driver, older, quiet, professional. The ride to the restaurant took 20 minutes, ending at a building in the financial district that had no signage, no obvious entrance, nothing to suggest it was anything but abandoned office space. The driver opened her door. 5th floor, Mr. Voss is waiting. Evelyn entered the building alone, found an elevator that required a key card to operate, and pressed the button for the 5th floor when the doors simply opened at her approach. The elevator rose in silence. When the doors opened, Adrian stood waiting. He changed into a black suit that probably cost more than Evelyn's rent, his bruises mostly hidden by carefully applied concealer. He looked every inch the dangerous criminal he was. Controlled, lethal, absolutely in command of his world. But when he saw Evelyn, his expression softened into something almost human. You're stunning, he said simply, offering his hand. She took it, stepping into a room filled with people who radiated wealth and danger in equal measure. Ready? Adrian asked quietly. Evelyn looked around the room, at the men in expensive suits conducting illegal business over wine and appetizers, at the women who wore diamonds probably purchased with blood money, at the world she was stepping into with full knowledge of what it cost. Ready, she said. And together they walked into the darkness. The room fell silent when Adrian entered with Evelyn on his arm. Not the comfortable silence of people pausing conversation, but the calculated quiet of predators assessing new variables. Every eye in the room tracked their movement, measuring, evaluating, cataloging Evelyn as either weakness or weapon. Adrian's hand tightened on hers, a silent message of protection and possession. Gentlemen, he said, his voice carrying effortless authority, thank you for coming. Before we discuss business, I'd like you to meet Evelyn Carter. She's important to me, which means she's under my protection. I trust we all understand what that means. It wasn't a request. It was a declaration of war against anyone who might consider her a target. A man near the windows, silver-haired, expensive suit, eyes like a shark, raised his glass in acknowledgement. Adrian always did have exquisite taste. Miss Carter, welcome to the shadows. I hope you find them comfortable. The next 2 hours were the strangest of Evelyn's life. She sat beside Adrian at a table where men discussed shipping routes and customs officials like they were discussing baseball scores. They talked about acquisitions, never specifying what they were acquiring, and markets, never naming which laws they were breaking. Everything was coded, careful, wrapped in enough ambiguity to maintain deniability. But Evelyn understood perfectly. These men moved more than art. Antiquities? Yes. But also other things. Luxury goods that bypassed import taxes. Items that required discretion and connections and willingness to operate outside legal constraints. Adrian's hand stayed on her knee the entire time, grounding, possessive, reminding her she wasn't alone in this room full of criminals. During dessert, a woman approached their table, late 40s, beautiful in a predatory way, wearing diamonds that could fund a small country. Adrian, darling, you've been holding out on us. Her accent was French, her smile sharp enough to cut. Your photographer is lovely. Does she know what you really do, or are you still playing the reformed businessman? Evelyn knows exactly who I am, Dominique, and she's choosing to stay anyway. Adrian's tone was pleasant, but Evelyn heard the warning underneath, which makes her braver than most people in this room. Dominique's eyes assessed Evelyn with uncomfortable precision. Brave or foolish? Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. She leaned closer. A word of advice, chérie. Men like Adrian, they don't do relationships, they do transactions. Make sure you know which one you are. She walked away before Evelyn could respond, leaving poison in her wake. Don't listen to her, Adrian said quietly. Dominique deals in manipulation and doubt. It's her business model. Is she wrong, though? Evelyn asked, keeping her voice low. Are you capable of a real relationship, or am I just another acquisition? Adrian turned to face her fully, his dark eyes intense. You're the first thing I've wanted that I can't control or possess or file away in my empire. That terrifies me more than any business rival or law enforcement threat. So no, you're not a transaction. You're the variable that's rewriting my entire equation. Before Evelyn could respond, a phone buzzed. Not Adrian's, someone across the room. Then another. Then a third. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Men stood, checked phones, exchanged glances that communicated volumes without words. Adrian pulled out his own phone, read something, and his expression went cold. What's wrong? Evelyn whispered. We need to leave. Now. He stood, pulling her up with him. Marcus is bringing the car around. Adrian, what's happening? Police raid. Not here, at one of the warehouses in Seaport. But it means someone talked, someone made a deal, and we need to be anywhere but in a room full of people who can't afford to be connected to each other. His hand was already guiding her toward the elevator, moving fast but not running. Never running. That would show fear, and men like Adrian Voss didn't show fear. They made it to the car before the sirens started wailing in the distance. Marcus drove with precise speed, fast enough to put distance between them and the dinner, slow enough not to attract attention. Your warehouse? Evelyn asked, her heart hammering. Different one. I have 3 in Seaport. They hit the smallest, least important. Probably found some inventory, but nothing that connects directly to me. Adrian was already making calls, speaking rapid fire in multiple languages. His entire demeanor shifted from lover to strategist. But it means someone's been watching, building a case, and I need to know who and how much they know. They drove to the brownstone on Beacon Hill. Marcus swept the building before allowing them inside, checking for surveillance or unwelcome visitors. When he gave the all clear, Adrian finally seemed to breathe. I'm sorry, he said, turning to Evelyn. This isn't how I wanted tonight to end. With police raids and evacuations? Yeah, not exactly romantic. She tried for lightness, but her voice shook. Is this going to be a problem? Are you going to be arrested? Not immediately. I'm careful about paper trails and ownership structures, but he paused, jaw tightening. This is what I warned you about. My world has consequences, and those consequences are closing in. Before Evelyn could respond, Adrian's phone rang again. He answered, listened for 30 seconds, and his expression went from concerned to murderous. When? Pause. How much did they take? Another pause. Find him. I don't care what it costs. Find him and bring him to me. He ended the call and looked at Evelyn with eyes that had gone completely cold. Someone in my organization sold information to the police. Someone I trusted. They gave up warehouse locations, shipping schedules, enough to build a case. His voice was flat, emotionless, terrifying in its control. I need to handle this. Marcus will take you home. Adrian, please, Evelyn. I need you safe while I deal with this. And what I'm about to do? He stopped, shaking his head. You don't need to see it. You don't need to carry it. You're going to hurt someone, not a question. I'm going to eliminate a threat to my business and everyone in it, including you. He cupped her face, his touch gentle despite the violence in his eyes. This is the part you can't witness, the part I need to protect you from. Let Marcus take you home. I'll call you when it's done. Every instinct told Evelyn to argue, to demand she stay, to prove she could handle his darkness. But the look in Adrian's eyes stopped her. This wasn't the controlled criminal or the vulnerable lover. This was something colder, more dangerous, the part of him that eliminated obstacles permanently. Okay, she whispered, but you call me, no matter how late. You call me so I know you're alive. I promise. He kissed her, hard, desperate, tasting like goodbye. I love you. Remember that, no matter what happens next. Then Marcus was ushering her to the car, and Adrian was disappearing into the brownstone's shadows. and Evelyn was being driven home with her heart in her throat and questions she couldn't answer burning through her mind. Maya was waiting in Evelyn's apartment again, having sensed disaster with the intuition of best friends everywhere. "What happened?" she demanded the moment Evelyn walked in. Evelyn told her everything. The dinner, the police raid, Adrian's cold promise to handle the traitor in his organization. "He's going to kill someone," Maya said flatly. "You know that, right? He's not just going to have a stern conversation. He's going to actually kill someone." "I know." Evelyn collapsed on her couch, suddenly exhausted. "And I can't stop him. Can't change who he is or what his world requires." "So what are you going to do?" "Wait. Hope he comes back. Figure out if I can actually live with loving a man who does terrible things for understandable reasons." The hours crawled past. Midnight came and went. 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Evelyn's phone stayed silent. At 3 a.m., Maya fell asleep on the couch. Evelyn stayed awake, staring at her phone, willing it to ring. At 4:15 a.m., someone knocked on her door. Evelyn looked through the peephole and saw a woman she didn't recognize, late 30s, professional clothes, carrying a badge. "Ms. Carter? I'm Detective Sarah Chen, Boston Police. I need to speak with you about Adrian Voss." Evelyn's blood turned to ice. She opened the door, but kept the chain lock engaged. "What about him?" "Can I come in? This is a sensitive conversation." "Not until you tell me what's going on. Is Adrian hurt? Arrested?" Detective Chen's expression was carefully neutral. "Neither, as far as I know. But we're building a case against Mr. Voss for smuggling, racketeering, and potentially more serious crimes. And I believe you have information that could help us." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Ms. Carter, we've been watching Mr. Voss for 6 months. We know you've been photographing his properties, spending time at his warehouse, attending events with known criminals." Chen pulled out a folder, showed Evelyn a photograph through the crack in the door. It was from tonight's dinner, Evelyn sitting beside Adrian, surrounded by men whose faces were circled in red. "You're either a victim of his manipulation or an accomplice to his crimes. Help us, and we can protect you. Stay silent, and you're going down with him." Maya appeared behind Evelyn, phone in hand. "She's not saying anything without a lawyer. Leave. Now." "This is a courtesy visit, Ms. Carter, a chance to cooperate before we bring you in officially." Chen pulled out a card and slid it under the door. "Think about it. Call me before Friday, or the next conversation happens in an interrogation room." She left, and Evelyn stood frozen in her doorway, the detective's card burning like evidence of everything she'd become. "Okay," Maya said shakily. "Okay, this is really bad. They have photographs. They've been watching. Ev, you could go to prison." "I know." Evelyn picked up the card with numb fingers. "I need to call Adrian." "Or you could call that detective back and tell her everything. Cut a deal. Save yourself." "And destroy the man I love? Send him to prison for crimes I now understand and accept?" Evelyn shook her head. "I can't do that, Maya." "Even if it means going to prison yourself?" "Even then." She called Adrian. The phone rang 4 times before he answered, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Evelyn, I'm sorry. I meant to call—" "A detective just came to my apartment, Sarah Chen. She has photographs of us together, says they're building a case, wants me to cooperate." The words tumbled out fast. "Adrian, they've been watching us for months." Silence on the other end, then Adrian's voice, cold and controlled. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. Maya made her leave, but she's coming back. They want me to turn on you." "Listen to me very carefully." Adrian's tone shifted into something harder, more commanding. "Don't talk to them. Not a word without a lawyer present. I'm sending Marcus to your apartment right now with my attorney's information. If they bring you in, you call him immediately. Do you understand?" "Adrian, I'm not going to— I know you won't betray me, but they'll try to scare you, manipulate you, make promises they won't keep. So you say nothing, absolutely nothing. Can you do that for me?" "Yes." Evelyn's voice steadied. "What about you? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. The situation is handled." His voice softened fractionally. "I'm coming to you. Give me 20 minutes." He arrived in 15, looking like he'd aged a decade in the 6 hours since she'd last seen him. His knuckles were freshly bruised, new injuries on top of old ones. His suit was rumpled, and his eyes held a darkness that made Evelyn's stomach twist. But when he saw her, Something in his expression cracked open. "I'm sorry," he said, pulling her into his arms. "I'm so sorry I pulled you into this, that my choices are becoming your consequences." "What happened tonight?" Evelyn asked against his chest. "Did you find the person who betrayed you?" "Yes." Flat, final, offering no details she didn't need to carry. And they won't be providing any more information to the police or anyone else. Adrian's arms tightened around her. But the damage is done. Detective Chen has been building this case for months. She has evidence, connections, probably testimonies from people I've done business with. The net is closing. So what do we do? Adrian pulled back to look at her, his hands framing her face. We? There is no we in this, Evelyn. You walk away. You tell Detective Chen I manipulated you, that you had no knowledge of my crimes, that you were an innocent photographer who got caught in a dangerous man's orbit. You save yourself. No. Evelyn, no. She grabbed his wrists, holding his hands to her face. I'm not leaving you. I'm not betraying you. I chose this life with full knowledge of what it meant. I'm not running now just because it's getting difficult. Difficult. You could go to prison, lose your career, your freedom, your entire future. Adrian's voice broke. I can't let you sacrifice all of that for me. And I can't let you face this alone. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. You said you loved me, that I wasn't a transaction or an acquisition, so stop trying to protect me from my own choices. Let me stand with you. Adrian stared at her for a long moment, something raw and broken in his expression. Then he kissed her, desperate and gentle and tasting like salt from tears she couldn't tell were hers or his. I don't deserve you, he whispered against her lips. Probably not, but you have me anyway. She pulled back, trying to think clearly through the fear. What are our options, really? Adrian was quiet, considering. Then he led her to the couch, sat beside her, and laid out the situation with brutal honesty. Option 1. I run. Leave the country, disappear into one of the places I have connections and resources. Start over somewhere without extradition treaties. You stay here, cooperate with police, rebuild your life without me. Not acceptable. Next option. Option 2. I stay and fight. Hire the best lawyers money can buy, use every connection I have to discredit witnesses and suppress evidence. It could work, but it would take years and cost everything I've built. And there's no guarantee I win. What about option 3? Evelyn asked. Option 3 doesn't exist. Then we make one. Evelyn stood, pacing, her mind racing. What if you did what you've been planning anyway? What if you started returning the pieces in your archive? What if you cooperated with authorities, not about your criminal network, but about art recovery? Help museums and governments reclaim stolen cultural heritage. Become an asset instead of just a criminal. Adrian's eyes widened. You're suggesting I turn informant. I'm suggesting you change the narrative. Stop being just the smuggler and become the man who helps return priceless art to its rightful owners. Evelyn's voice gained strength as the idea took shape. You said those pieces in your archive are meant to go home eventually. What if eventually is now? What if you use them as leverage, cooperation, in exchange for immunity or reduced charges? It would mean giving up my business, my entire empire. Would it? Or would it mean transforming it into something legitimate, using your knowledge and connections to broker legal art deals instead of illegal ones? Evelyn moved back to him, taking his hands. You said your parents were art historians, that they died protecting cultural heritage. What better way to honor them than actually doing what they would have done, preserving art, returning it home, making a difference? Adrian stared at her like she'd just rewritten his entire future. You're suggesting I become legitimate. I'm suggesting you become who you've always wanted to be underneath the criminal, the protector, not the thief, the preserver, not the smuggler. Evelyn squeezed his hands. And I'm suggesting we do it together. You provide the art and the knowledge. I document the returns, create exhibitions around the stories. We turn your criminal empire into cultural preservation. For a long moment, Adrian was silent. Then a slow smile spread across his face, genuine, hopeful, transforming him into someone younger and less burdened. It could work, he said slowly. I have contacts in museums, cultural organizations, governments. I know where pieces came from, how they were taken, where they belong. If I approach the right people with the right offer. He stopped, his smile fading. But the police are already building their case. I can't just walk into Detective Chen's office and offer a deal. No, but I can. Evelyn grabbed her phone, found the detective's card. I can tell her I want to cooperate, that I have information about your business and your inventory. And when she brings me in, I tell her about the archive, about the pieces you've been preserving, about your willingness to help recover stolen art in exchange for consideration. You'd be negotiating my surrender. I'd be negotiating our future. Evelyn met his eyes. Trust me, let me do this. Adrian cupped her face, his expression full of something that looked like wonder. 3 weeks ago, you were invisible. Now you're rewriting my entire existence. What happened to the woman who apologized for taking up space? She fell in love with a criminal and decided to save him from himself. Evelyn managed a shaky smile. So what do you say? Are we doing this? Adrian kissed her, soft, reverent, full of promise. We're doing this. Detective Chen agreed to meet Evelyn the next morning at a coffee shop in Cambridge. She arrived with another detective and a recording device, clearly expecting confession and betrayal. Instead, Evelyn offered something better. Adrian Voss has an archive, she said calmly, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup to stop them shaking. Priceless pieces of art and antiquities he's been preserving. Cultural heritage that was stolen during wars, revolutions, political upheaval. He's been keeping them safe until they could be returned to their countries of origin. Chen's expression was skeptical. You expect me to believe he's some kind of art hero? I expect you to verify what I'm telling you. The Caravaggio missing since World War II. The Egyptian reliefs that disappeared from the Cairo Museum during the Revolution. Chinese scrolls taken during political purges. He has them. All of them. Cataloged, preserved, documented. Evelyn pulled out her phone and showed them photographs she'd taken in the archive. And he's willing to help you return them. All of them. In exchange for immunity on the smuggling charges. The detectives exchanged glances. Chen leaned forward. Even if this is true, he's still a criminal. He still broke laws. He did. But he also preserved pieces that would have been destroyed or lost forever. He protected cultural heritage when no one else would. Evelyn held Chen's gaze. Isn't that worth something? Isn't recovering billions of dollars in stolen art worth making a deal with the man who saved it? The negotiation took 3 weeks. Adrian's lawyers worked with prosecutors to craft an agreement. Immunity from smuggling and racketeering charges in exchange for full cooperation in recovering stolen art. He'd provide documentation, provenance, contacts, everything needed to return pieces to their rightful owners. In exchange, he'd transform his business from criminal empire to legitimate art recovery and consulting. The morning they signed the agreement, Adrian stood in a conference room surrounded by lawyers and government officials, signing away his criminal empire with precise, controlled strokes. Evelyn watched from the corner, documenting everything with her camera. This was the work Catherine had demanded. Truth instead of performance, courage instead of safety. The moment a criminal chose redemption and a woman chose to stand beside him through the transformation. After the signing, Adrian found her in the hallway. I'm not who I was, he said quietly. The business is gone. The connections, the power, the control, all of it dismantled. I'm starting over from nothing. Not nothing. Evelyn took his hand. You have the archive. You have knowledge and expertise. You have a chance to do what your parents would have wanted. And I have you. He pulled her close. Somehow, impossibly, I have you. 6 months later, Evelyn stood in Catherine Moreau's gallery, surrounded by her photographs documenting the return of Adrian's archive to museums around the world. Each image told a story. Art coming home, cultures reclaiming heritage, beauty restored to the people who'd lost it. The exhibition was called Visible, a study in redemption and return. It was Evelyn's first solo show, and the opening night was packed with collectors, critics, and people who'd followed the story of Adrian Voss's transformation from criminal to cultural hero. Adrian stood beside her wearing a suit but no longer looking like he was armored for war. He'd transformed too, his business now focused on consulting with museums and governments on art recovery, using his knowledge for good instead of profit. You did this, he said quietly, his hand finding hers. You saw who I could be and demanded I become it. You did this, Evelyn corrected. I just showed you the possibility. You chose to walk toward it. Catherine approached them, a rare smile on her face. Miss Carter, your work is extraordinary. Honest, raw, exactly what I challenged you to create. You've documented transformation, yours and his. It's remarkable. Thank you. Evelyn looked around the gallery, at her photographs displayed like they mattered, at the people studying them with genuine interest. I couldn't have done it without courage I didn't know I had. Love does that, Catherine observed. Makes us braver than we thought possible. She glanced at Adrian. You're lucky, Mr. Voss. She saw your darkness and chose light for both of you. After Catherine walked away, Adrian pulled Evelyn into a quiet corner. I have something for you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Evelyn's heart stopped. Adrian, it's not what you think. Not yet, anyway. He opened the box to reveal a key, old brass, ornate, clearly antique. This is the key to the brownstone on Beacon Hill. I want you to move in with me. Build a life together in that beautiful space. Fill it with your photographs and my recovered pieces and proof that we exist, together, visibly. Evelyn took the key with shaking hands. You're sure? This is fast, and we've already survived so much chaos. I'm certain. I've spent 10 years building walls and hiding in shadows. You taught me that visibility isn't weakness, it's courage. So I'm choosing to be visible with you, choosing us, publicly and permanently. He cupped her face. Move in with me. Let's build something beautiful from the wreckage of what we were. Yes. The word came out choked with tears and joy. Yes, absolutely yes. They kissed in the corner of the gallery while Evelyn's photographs documented their journey on the walls around them. From invisible artist to visible woman, from criminal to redeemed man, from strangers to partners who'd chosen each other despite every reason not to. Maya found them 20 minutes later, champagne in hand and tears in her eyes. I still think you're both crazy, she said, hugging Evelyn tight. But you're crazy together, and somehow you made it work. I'm proud of you, babe. Proud you chose courage even when it terrified you. The evening dissolved into celebration. Gallery sales. Congratulations. Collectors expressing interest in commissioning Evelyn for projects. Adrian fielding questions about his transformation and his new consulting business. At midnight, they escaped to the brownstone, exhausted and exhilarated and drunk on possibility. I can't believe this is real, Evelyn said, standing in the parlor that would soon be theirs together. 6 months ago, I was invisible. Now I have a gallery show, a man I love, a life that actually feels like mine. You were never invisible, Adrian said, pulling her close. You just needed someone to see you clearly enough to make you believe in your own visibility. And you needed someone to see past the criminal and recognize the man who wanted redemption. Evelyn rested her head against his chest, hearing his heartbeat steady and strong. We saved each other. We did. Adrian's arms tightened around her. And we're going to keep saving each other, every day, through whatever comes next. What came next was building a life neither had imagined possible. Adrian's consulting business grew as museums and governments recognized his expertise in art recovery. Evelyn's photography career flourished as she documented returns, exhibitions, the human stories behind cultural heritage restored. They traveled together, to museums in Cairo receiving Egyptian artifacts, to Czech Republic helping repatriate pieces stolen during political upheaval, to China witnessing scrolls returning home after decades in shadows. And everywhere they went, Evelyn photographed. Not just the art, but the people, curators crying at pieces they'd thought lost forever, government officials celebrating cultural victories, everyday people seeing their heritage returned. She documented redemption in all its forms. A year after the gallery show, Adrian proposed properly, on the rooftop of the warehouse where Evelyn had first photographed his business, overlooking Boston Harbor at dawn. You saw me when I was invisible, he said, ring in hand, voice rough with emotion. You chose me when I was criminal. You saved me when I was lost. Now I'm asking you to marry me. Not the man I was, but the man you helped me become. Evelyn said yes through tears and laughter and overwhelming joy. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the brownstone, surrounded by friends and colleagues and the art they'd helped return to the world. Maya stood beside Evelyn, still protective but accepting. Marcus stood beside Adrian, the bodyguard who'd become a friend. Catherine Moreau attended, gifting them a photograph from Evelyn's exhibition with a note. To the woman who learned to be visible and the man who learned to be good. May you continue choosing courage over comfort. During their first dance, Adrian pulled Evelyn close and whispered, "Thank you." For what? For seeing me. For staying. For demanding I become worthy of you. His voice cracked. For loving the criminal enough to find the man underneath. Thank you for making me visible, Evelyn whispered back. For seeing my talent when I couldn't. For teaching me that taking up space isn't selfish, it's essential. They swayed together as night fell over Boston, two people who'd found each other in darkness and chosen to walk toward light together. Years later, when people asked Evelyn about her career transformation, from invisible wedding photographer to internationally recognized documentary artist, she always told the same story. I met a man who saw me, really saw me. And in seeing me, he taught me to see myself. Everything else followed from that courage. The gallery shows, the exhibitions, the life I built. But it started with being seen. And when people asked Adrian about his transformation from criminal to cultural hero, he smiled and said simply, I met a woman who refused to let me hide, who demanded I become the man I'd buried under years of survival and moral compromise. She saved me by making me visible to myself and the world. They built an empire together, not of crime and shadows, but of beauty and restoration. The brownstone became both home and gallery, filled with photographs documenting returns and pieces awaiting their journey home. Evelyn never stopped photographing, but now her lens captured hope instead of longing, courage instead of invisibility, redemption instead of performance. And Adrian never stopped protecting her, not from danger anymore, but from the creeping fear that visibility was temporary, that mattering was conditional, that she might disappear back into the shadows. You're permanent, he told her on their 5th anniversary, holding her close in the brownstone's parlor. Your visibility, your talent, your importance, all permanent. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget that. And I'll spend the rest of mine making sure you never forget you're more than your past, Evelyn promised. You're the man who chose goodness, who used his darkness to bring light back to the world. That's who you are now. They'd both been invisible once. Evelyn behind her camera, Adrian behind his criminal empire. Both hiding from the world, both terrified of being truly seen. Then they found each other and chose courage over comfort, visibility over safety, love over the easy lie of self-protection. And in that choice, they didn't just save each other. They became themselves, fully, visibly, permanently. The invisible artist learned to take up space. The dangerous criminal learned to choose redemption. And together, they proved that transformation isn't about erasing who you were, but having the courage to become who you're meant to be. Evelyn Carter was no longer invisible. She was a woman who'd stepped into danger willingly and found not just love, but power, identity, and a life that was finally, undeniably her own. And Adrian Voss was no longer just a criminal. He was a man who'd chosen mercy over violence, preservation over profit, love over the lonely safety of his walls. They'd walked into darkness together and emerged transformed, visible, redeemed, and absolutely, courageously alive.